Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And here's the third of today's live chats. And I was thinking on what to do the show about. The first two shows haven't gone up yet, so I couldn't look at them again to refresh my mind. But mostly I've been talking about magic and what it is. And because a lot of people get a hold after, what I seem to have enamored a audience was about the old crone, right? And that she's a witch. Well, she wasn't. She's a crone. There's a big difference between witches and crones. And the dynamic is a crone is a human being who has, through conscious intent and conscious awareness, has purified themselves. And even though they are existing in a mud puppet, have, again, purified that to a point where they are ascended beings in a body. And so there are a lot of folks, who were that. Buddha was that, Christ was that, Vishnu, a number of others. And Jesus has always been here. He is a elemental. And, when he was nailed to the cross, and, nailing to the cross was a gift given to the people who were crucified, meaning normally they just kind of tied them up there, and it would take them forever to die. By nailing them, hands and feet to the cross, what it did was, they started to bleed out, and slowly, not like if they had a wound in their organ area, but still they would bleed a great deal from their hands and feet. And they would go into shock, and they would be in the elements, and usually in heat without any water. And so they would die rather rapidly compared to those who were tied to the cross. Guys who died usually took a day or two. And by that, and in that in-between state, they weren't doing too good. The animals would be, vultures would kind of pick at them while they were still alive. So Christ died relatively quickly, plus a centurion rode up and drove a spear into his abdomen, and that's when he really died. Because Jesus, to be the character that was foretold to be, had to die at a certain time. And out of the blue came the centurion that dispatched Jesus. And actually, Jesus didn't die. He just looked like he died. He kind of died the way I've died 6 times, almost died. Right? So they took him down. The girls took him away and, oiled him up and put him in the cave. And they were still kind of watching after him. And he came back and, he walked among us because he never really died. He kind of died almost. And then, he gave the marching orders to his apostles and to other folk, like the girls. And then he left town. He didn't ascend up. He spoke to the boys from, not a mountaintop, but a outcropping above them, right? And then he just kind of walked off on the path, and everyone construed that he went to heaven, right? And so, but he didn't. He and Mary and the girls went on to Greece first, to the islands. And that's where you will find the writings of Jesus. You go read the Greek Orthodox Bible, it's a lot different than King James, right? And so then, Jesus went from there into the rest of Europe, went to France, went to England, went to Ireland, Scotland, on to you know um, North America, South America. He went all, and you can see him appearing historically here, there, and everywhere. Right? The Iroquois nation. This character walked across the water while the nations of the Iroquois were fighting amongst each other, which they like to do. And he walked right to where they were fighting and stopped them fighting. And he opened up the earth and he said, "Bury your hatchets," meaning because the Iroquois and the Mohawk and the Onondaga all fought with these kind of hatchets. And and that's where the term "bearing the hatchet" came from. Jesus, buried the hatchet. And he stayed there as the great peacemaker, and he taught the young chiefs of each of the nations and created the Iroquois nation of, that's the 8 or 9, the Mohawk, the Onondaga, the Seneca, and about 5 others, and they became the Iroquois nation. And our Constitution was based on their great law. The boys, Jefferson and the boys who wrote up the Constitution just kind of, stole it from the Iroquois. And the Iroquois gave it to them. They were happy to give it to them, hoping that the white morons would pick something up, And the Indians, they have, for the last 600 years, lived their life as an example, right? And I have lived with, I was up at, Cornell, and right at the time, the Iroquois had a contract with the Dutch, and they did not sell New York State to the Dutch. They rented it to them. And the Dutch on the contract wrote "in perpetuity," which is a Latin term, legal term, that meant forever. But at a certain point in American jurisprudence, that got turned to 99 years. So in 1987, when I was there, the Iroquois nation was negotiating with New York State because legally about 80% of New York State was going to go back into the legal hands of the Iroquois nation. Well, that was never going to happen. And so they were trying to strike a good deal. And Grandfather David, the elder of the Iroquois nation, the head chief, he was quite, the educated man. He was a scholar, and he was the leader of the tribe for a good 20 years. And his son took over, and who was in his 40s, and he ran the day-to-day business. But Grandfather David, was doing the negotiations. And his son was my good friend, and he asked me, he said, "Listen, can you drive?" My father is too old. I mean, he has a car, he's got a license, but he's really too old to drive. And to drive from Ithaca to Syracuse, where the negotiations were going on in the federal court building, that's like a 2-hour drive, give or take. And can you drive him? And, if you drive with him, you'll have 4 hours to talk to him, and he will get to know you, and you can study with him and learn from him. And I did. And, he used to call me grandson. He used to take me to powwows. And everyone, all the Iroquois, a good deal of them, had married into Dutch families for political and economic reasons. And they looked more, like David, my friend, Grandfather David's son. I mean, he had blonde hair, blue eyes, Anglo features, where his father looked more, native First Persons, and his uncle, who was a Mohawk, man, he looked like he came straight off the nickel. And his mother also was a Mohawk, and she was quite also very mohawkish. But David, not so much. Like I said, blonde hair and blue eyes. And anyway, so that was one of my native elders who taught me and considered me as his grandson. Like I said, when we would go to powwows and we would go in council, where white people aren't supposed to be, he'd walk. He's the head dude, and he'd walk in, and I'd be with him, and along with his son. And his son looks as Anglo as I do. I mean, actually, I look less Anglo than Dave did. And so when people would kind of raise an eyebrow about me entering the lodge, he would say, "This is my grandson." And he is going to, he takes me to Syracuse every other week to negotiate, and he's part of that. So he is there because I, again, had abilities to read people, and I had a good deal of legal experience because I had worked for Ralph Nader, right? So Grandfather David basically would. We not only spend 4 hours every time we went to Syracuse, but I spent a lot of time, even though I was working at Cornell, there was a fall that when I was driving Grandfather David, I basically lived on their compound. He had a farm, and like my friend Mary, who I fixed up her farm, and then I fixed up other people. I was like, I got the street cred as the farm electrician. And so Grandfather David's farm was older than dirt, and it had electricity, but it was like, wired in 1920. And so it definitely needed some upgrading. And so I did. And I lived on at their farm while I did that fall. And so I studied with him. We did ceremony together. We sweat together. We walked the woods, right? And he introduced me to some esoteric knowledge that the Iroquois Nation had. And a good deal of the Theosophical Society that was based in a place called Pumpkin Hollow, which was not too far. It was upstate New York. It was not too far from Grandfather David's farm. And so I kind of initially was introduced to Pumpkin Hollow through Grandfather David because he was part of the Theosophical Society too. And I had gone there. Actually, earlier I had gone there because I had a friend of mine who was a student there, and she was one of my electricians. I was teaching her to be an electrician, and she said, you want to go up to this place called Pumpkin Hollow Theosophical?" And the Theosophical Society had a place in New York City that I used to hang out in. So I had many different touchstones to the Theosophical Society and the teachings of Madame Blavatsky. And there were other great teachers of that school. And one of Madame Blavatsky's girlfriends was head of the Theosophical Society when I was going there. She was in her 80s, 90s. And she was, as spry as a spring chicken, and she was an amazing gardener up at Pumpkin Hollow, man. Their gardens was unfriggin' believable. And it was all through energy. They weren't like spraying anything or putting fertilizer down or blah, blah, blah. They were coming at it through conscious intent. And that was another place that I had, got exposed to the whole use of conscious intent. There was I forget the guy's name, but there was a Stanford physicist and mental, how the brain works kind of guy. I mean, a guy who mastered many scientific disciplines, and he proved, by a shadow of a doubt that he used conscious intent with fruit flies, and had a control group, and this other group that was he was working with, where he was focusing his conscious intent that the fruit flies would grow quicker. The ones that he was focusing his conscious intent on, that they would grow quicker and stronger and better and healthier than the other group, and they did. And he also physically moved things. People would call that telekinesis. And he moved things with his conscious intent. And the things he moved had physical effects on things around them, right, which could be measured, right? And so this was, scientific proof beyond shadow of a doubt that through psychokinesis and meditation, you could affect the change of the world. And that's why the CIA kind of went after doing remote viewing. They realized that was going on. And I met a guy in Australia. I lived in Australia with my first wife, Dawn, for 3 years. And we took a trip from Melbourne. I got a gig from the federal government of Australia to go over into the Northern Territories near Ayers Rock and hang with this and do an ethnography on this tribe, the Wallamajiri, that 15 years earlier basically had been genocide by the Australian mineral company owned by a Canadian company. And everyone thinks Canadians are so sweet and nice, but as a transnational entity, they got some serious issues. And so they're just polite, So, and why the federal government wanted me to go do an ethnography on these people is that they were trying to get the Olympics in Sydney. And these, the remembrance of this genocide, and they did it like in the 60s. And so the people, I don't know if we want to have the Olympics at people like you. So we were set up there to show that, hey, it was not so bad. They're being treated okay. And so, and that's a whole nother story. And I'll dig up some photos. And there, I told the story a number of times when I showed the photos of me being with the Aborigines. And they knew I was coming before I even headed to Australia, A year later, when we finally got there. And, the government didn't even give us a vehicle. They gave us a bus pass. So we traveled from Melbourne to... and instead of, so from Melbourne, if we could had a car and could have driven this way, it's like maybe 1,800 miles. But what we did was we took the Greyhound bus from Melbourne to Adelaide to some other place, to some other place, to some other place, to this place called Alice Springs, right? And it's kind of between this place and Broome. And Alice Springs has a U.S. facility that makes Area 51 look like nothing, because it's way in the middle of nowhere in another country. No one even knows it's there. And that's where most of the NSA listening goes on. It's where all of our downloads from our spy satellites goes to. And there's also a place called the Wallam Missile Range, and that has a few names to it. And in the 1950s, they were experimenting, shooting Nike Hercules missiles up into the troposphere with hydrogen bombs, thinking that would be a good way to knock out incoming ICBM warheads. And so, because, and what they did do was obliterate the ozone of the planet. It wasn't from hairspray or CFCs. It was from this hydrogen bomb testing. And not only did it wipe out the ozone in our atmosphere that protects us from ultraviolet light, and the cancer rates went. Virtually everyone I knew in Australia died of skin cancer. And I knew about this, and I was real sensitive to it. So I, lathered myself up in sunblock, and I would wear big hats, and I always wore umbrella. I had an umbrella, and I would, sunny day, I'd put my umbrella up, and I sprayed the inside of the umbrella with lead paint. And I did Jane, good to see you there. Hi, Dreamy. And so I've had a real connection with First Peoples and of every flavor. When I was in Brazil, I hooked up this. I was brought to Brazil to build a what you call it a disco in this you know peninsula about 200 miles north of Rio called Buzios, Brazil, and it's a hangout for rich Euro trash. And there's a hospital there that does plastic surgery, and they kind of advertise themselves as like giving chicks big boobs and tummy tucks and stuff like that. But in reality, it's run by Nazis who basically genetically change you to a different person, right? And all these Nazis who wanted to, have a different face, different fingerprints, different, you know, genes, these Nazis did it to them. And they had been doing it since the late 40s, early 50s, right? And so not just Nazis, but anybody who wants, who has the money and the political um, can do it. And also they were the mainframe folk who were building hybrid slash transhumans, and transhuman, if you read any of what's his name, the mathematician, the inventor of the computer at Bletchley Park. What's his name? Starts with a T. Anyway, and he wrote a book called about cyborgs, and artificial intelligence. He wrote it in the 30s. And because technology was way ahead of what people thought it was, transistors, integrated circuits. The Nazis had these, and they got it from other folk. The Nazis are really good at back engineering stuff. They would get the heads up about a certain technology. They had a crew who were basically doing remote viewing of other dimensions and stealing the intellectual property of these other dimensions. So that had far superior technology than we did. And you have to realize that our solar system is like, 6 billion years old, and we have had many, 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 many different imperial forces. There's Fish, there's Jane, and I'm sure there's many, many more folk out there. So, one man's magic is another man's religion, is another man's technology, right? And so that's why in my writings, I don't use grammar to measure an idea, right? I use it artistically. My work is like one gigantic run-on sentence, separated by semicolons. My spellings, if you were to say Google spelling as a magical spell, what is it? Let's see what Google has to say. Grab the old Google box here. Let's see if we can jiggle, put my. Come on. Okay, let's see. Here's these boys.
Hello, everyone. everyone, this is Dark Journalist. Today I have a special bonus episode for you with Oxford scholar and Giza Death Star book series author, Dr. Joseph Farrell. Now, Dr. Farrell will take an in-depth look at how the deep state has attempted to appropriate ancient systems of power, understanding, and occult initiation to create an ultimate rule by sorcery. He explores the cultures that left behind the sacred record of advanced technology and the implications of these sacred mystery rites falling into the wrong hands.
If you're the national security state, you're going to do, in my opinion, a deep dive into those ancient texts and try to decode them. You have these civilizations telling you, no, we got this from somebody. And in the case of Babylonia, that somebody came down here, lowered kingship from heaven to earth.
Please join us now.
I mean, if you look at some of these devices, Daniel, they're just bizarre. They look like modernist sculptures. They're just bizarre-looking things.
That's incredible. And it reminds me of these objects that, there's a whole group of Laplanders who's used these very strange objects for healing or for, improving somebody's mental output or whatever it is. And they're just odd little things. It's like a weird shape. But what's interesting to me about this is in this period, actually, you mentioned in the 70s, there was the whole push behind like Uri Geller.
Yes.
And, bringing psychic power out. And the guy behind him was Puharich, this Andrei Puharich.
So that's Dark Journalism, and you guys should start checking that out because that is a great channel. They have really great knowledge. I just throw it up in front of you to expose you to that. There's another truly graceful, right? There's a really great little channel. And there are a number of really great channels on the YouTube, and they're all getting attacked. They're all being knocked down. Now, I'm not quite being attacked. I'm just being, stuck on the bottom of the totem pole of the algorithm, right? And it's interesting that people only knew that within the construct of First Peoples, who gave us the totem pole, is these are animal totems that are guides, and they are a structural dynamic of equalizing the spiritual power that is the balance of all our relations, right? And what the interesting thing, boy, you're the lowest man on the totem pole. Well, that is the most powerful position on the totem because it's the foundation. And the original totem foundation was the turtle, and that was the solar system, right? And we're all on the back of the turtle, right? And then the next was the ant, and the ant was a creature that could lift 100 times its weight, that could, transmute. It would chew on anything and turn it into a building material or a medicine or a lot of things. And they, communicate telepathically. And we created by alien race as slaves? Yes, in Samaria, the Anunnaki came down, and we're somebody's, I keep saying, we're somebody's high school science fair project, And yes, and we basically were made in our laggard self to just love gold until we would dig it up, until we died trying. And So the dynamic is that is why we're driven by the need for gold, right? And the alien forces would take that gold and make what is known as that was the mana that you know the Hebrew God gave to Moses to feed and heal the Hebrew race out in the 40 years out in the desert, right? The Anunnaki gold. Check out Gaia. Yeah, Gaia's a good channel. I like it. Um, Monotonic gold. Thank you. Um, remember, I had it on chief, so there's certain vowels and consonants that my mouth cannot produce. But it does pretty good otherwise, eating wise too. I gum everything, so I have to eat way slower so I, actually digest my food better. Dr. Joseph Farrell. Yep. A theology. Man, that guy is everything. He's not just a theologist. He's truly amazing. His books, you should read his books. He has this whole series of talking. You have to realize that the Nazis were an occult political group, just like in America. Look at Washington D.C. It's set out on a pentagram. There's a ton of obelisks everywhere. And look at Diana. She smacked into. She was down in a tunnel, and that's because that tunnel was going underneath the park. And one of the supporting columns of that tunnel was an obelisk that was above it, and she went right into it, right? So nothing just seems to happen, Everything is basically set out in a script. It's scripted. And that's why I do this show like this as a stream of consciousness, And so, let's see. Well, is a theologian. Yeah, that's what his Oxford degree is. But man, this guy knows his history and recent history, and he's a technologist. I mean, he's pretty much like me, a itinerant scholar. But he hasn't. Well, he's had jobs. He worked in Las Vegas, I think, as doing something in Las Vegas. I don't know what he did, but so he's done a lot of stuff. He's an interesting guy. Just so dark journalism is a very interesting outlet of that. And a radio show that was started by Art Bell. When Art Bell ran that radio show, that was a very, very interesting program, coast to coast. And he called it Dreamland. And I just took it one step further, calling it Dreamy Dreamland, my show. So I really loved Art Bell. I thought he was a true radio genius and great. What he was doing was great work. The guy took over as just a corporate lackey, and he was in naval intelligence, so he is totally, just, a gatekeeper. But the way Art Bell set up Coast to Coast with his website, and that website had its own internal righteousness. And so the Coast to Coast website is a pretty good place to go to look for things, and it's a good place to start because they've interviewed Art Bell did that show for at least 20 years. And then, Puddinhead, who's doing it now, is probably done it for at least 15, 20 years. So they got almost a 40-year chunk of radio programs. And so the information, and it's getting more and more and more available between social media and the computer and Google. You can, take yourself, but you need to use conscious intent. Whenever you do any research, use conscious intent. Conscious intent, I am. Conscious intent, I am. Conscious intent, I am. Oh, and that'll get you there. And a number of you have reached out to me on my email account, the dudeawake42 at Gmail, the dudeawake42 at Gmail, all lowercase, all one thing. And so there are at least 50 of you who have reached out to me and, oh, I want to learn how to do, can you be my teacher? Blah, 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 blah. And yes, I can be, but you have to teach, I am here as a guide, as a griot, tell you a story, You guys have to do your own work because only through your co-creation, I can't just pour it into you. People, oh, can I give you $300? You give me a certificate saying that I'm a shaman? Sorry, no. Because any work like that is a work in progress. I mean, look at medical guys. They got it somewhat right. Doctors have a practice. They don't say they know everything about it. They have a practice. And the doctors who think they know everything, they're the worst ones. You don't want to go to them. People who are constantly learning more and more and more and more. Those are people who take care of me, right? And they appreciate me because I give them insight on what their lives are, what they're doing. So they take care of me without me having to pay them because a lot of them, the paperwork would be too much. So they just let me waltz in there. And if I have the time to wait, my point in that, I get on the phone, talk to the nurse, say, hey, I'm going to come visit. They give me a kind of ballpark when to come by and if I can sit around until. But so, like the other day, a good example. I did that with my endocrinologist and my bone doctor, and my orthopedic doctor, and my foot doctor, and my infectious. I forgot what they call those guys. They measure your sit rate and see whether you're, because when you have diabetes and aplastic anemia and arthritis and Charcot legs and all of those things cause inflammation. Inflammation causes infection, and I can go after the races real quick. And so, like I once got an infection in my leg. I can't feel my legs, so I can bump against. I'm out in the woods. I can bump up against something and, get a cut or a scrape or this. I don't know it's there, and I can't see too well, and so I can get, infections. But once I got this infection, so I got this I kind of hit something like a nail that was in a tree, didn't even see it, kind of ripped up against my, right where there's a certain acupressure point in your knee, near your meniscus, and it kind of really did a number on that. And I didn't notice it, and within a week or so, my legs started to turn black. That's never good. And I went to this hospital, and they were like, "Oh my God, you have to cut that off." I said, "No, I've been through this. Just let's go through the protocol. X-ray it. Take a sample right from the point, put it in the lab, see if it's going septic, why it's doing this, da da da. Not just cut the friggin' leg off. Sorry, we're not doing that." And there was a side of the hospital. Oh, we had to do that, but there were other people. And this is when I met my orthopedic guy, and he was in charge of that. And he just happened to be on call in the emergency room. And someone said, "Oh, you got to go meet this guy. He'll read your palm." So he walked in, I read his palm, and I realized this is the doctor I need. And so I gave him really deep, cold reading, and he was like, "Oh." So he's talked and he's looking at my leg. And so he goes, "Okay, we're going to have to take a sample from inside your kneecap." I said, "That's cool. A little Novocaine, no problem." He says, "Good. I'm glad you understand." I said, "Yeah. Hey, I used to be an EMT, first responder, worked in hospitals. I know what you're doing." So he did. And he was the head guy. That's the guy. If someone's going to scrape around inside your kneecap, that's the guy you want. So he does. And he basically, what happens is he says, "I'm going to give you, my number 2 guy is going to do it because I have to go do something right now." His, what do you call them? his apprentice, I guess. There's terms for him. He was like high up there. He was supposed to be really good. Well, the guy was a loser. He walked in and I said, "Let me read your palm." So I'm not showing you my palm. I said, "Well, then I'm not showing you my knee." It's well, if I walk away, you're gonna have to lose your knee. I said, "No, I don't think so." Anyway, so he started poking around and he couldn't do it. He couldn't get this little kind of scrapey thing inside my kneecap. And by that time, the Novocaine was wearing off, and I was getting annoyed. And I said, "Fucking A, give me some gloves." I put some gloves on. I took the instrument, and I took the sample myself. Just when his boss was coming in, and he was at the door watching his one guy not being able to do it and freaking out about it. And then I took the, scrapey thing from the guy and did it to myself and put it in on the tray and on the little thing that they would go send off to the lab. And I knew how to do it. And so I did it. And it totally freaked the doctor out. And he didn't realize his boss was behind him. And the guy freaked out and ran out of the little enclosure I was in. And I looked up to the guy. I said, "That's your number one guy?" I said, "Eh." And so he apologized profusely. And that's why, ever since, he's been the guy who's been taking care of my body, at least my bones. So I went and saw him, right? And again, I called up his nurse, and she always loves it when I come by. I kind of amuse her. And so she says, "Well, if you can come by tomorrow," meaning I had no idea I was going to go there tomorrow. And I said, "What time?" "Oh, get here at 9:30. Well, I'm not a morning guy. I have to drive 30 miles. I said, "Okay." I said, "There is no afternoon." "No, we don't. This is just a guy who bailed on his appointment, and we can slip you in." I said, "Okay." "There's nothing in the afternoon. There's anything in the next week?" He said, "No, we don't have another time to see you until January." I said, "Okay, I guess it's 9:30 tomorrow." So I do. I show up, and I kind of come in, and the place normally is just packed with people. There's nobody there. So I, tell the person at the desk, "I'm here, blah, blah, blah." And they said, "Okay, we'll call you." And I go up and sit in the sun, right? And I told the lady, I said, "The waiting room, most of this gigantic waiting room is dark, but there's a sunny place. I'm going to go sit in the sun." So I go sit in the sun. They have really good Wi-Fi. I make all my connections. And I'm not there no more than 5 minutes, right? And I go in. I see the nurse. I amuse her. And she really runs the place. I tell her what I need. And what I really need, I needed braces for my ankles. And like both of them are like mush. So I needed something to hold them together. And because I have some really good braces from my knees, now I need something equally as good and so she goes, "No problem." And so they send me out to the x-ray guys, and it was like bing, 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 bing. Normally, I'd have to wait all day in their waiting room to see this person, that person. And it just went bing, 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 right? Because I was conscious, I'm going to be out of here in 20 minutes because I wanted to go have breakfast with another friend. That's me. When I go to a certain place, I had to drive 30 miles one way and 30 miles the other way. And so I wasn't just going to go there to see the doctor. I saw about 5 other people. I had breakfast with one because I was going to that place early enough. My friend has breakfast at this place that has breakfast all the time, really good pancakes. And went and saw her. And she is a linchpin of the cultured world in Virginia. She runs a 501c3 that gets people grants. And and then there were other people I was going to go see who are like artists, social activists, and they're good. I've known them a long time, and I've been for years trying to get them to have their own 501c3. I'd say, "I'll write the grant. I'll write your bylaws. I'll do all of that." But they're like, I don't know if it's laziness or they just want somebody else to give them money, not have to go. Anyway, I found this person who is like the linchpin of all of that. And I told them what they were doing. She says, "Well, we're starting a new thing that would be perfect. Just give them my phone number." And these people, I saw them that day, and I said, so I got it all set up. Here, let's call on the phone, and she'll just, you don't have to have a 501, so you don't, she's the umbrella group. And they were like, and I said, fine. I said I would do this for you. I've done it. If you don't don't, because you have to. I can't do everything. I can't. It's not. It's not spiritually appropriate for me to. I can give you assistance. I can tell you stories. I can, go into your Akashic records with you. These are all things I'm allowed to do, but I can't just do it for you, right? This is a work in progress. Your spirit is a work in progress. And it would be dharmically incorrect for me to just do things for people. I can make you smile. I can make you happy. I can fix your light switch. I can, adjust your back. So I wish I could adjust my own fucking back. I can't reach back over underneath my scapula to get at this spot. And so this house here is really haunted. The people who live here wonder why they were, having a hard time. And this goes back, they've had this house in their family for generations. Like I said, it was a slave house, and this was a plantation. It was a pretty bad plantation, And this is one of those places that, the state doesn't want, archaeologically dug up because it would show too many not too nice things, right? So, I mean, those guys come and see me, the ghosts, and they're not ghosts, they're spirits. Ghosts are a whole different thing. Spirit is that character that represents a dynamic of a political, social, historical, temporal point. And there are these, and and through time, there's a great deal of irrelevance, but there are these set points in time that things occur. And the guys who run everything are very arcane in this point right here is really bothering me. I wish I could adjust it. It's pretty hard to. I can adjust things on the front part of my body. On my back, not too good. And I've been sleeping on this couch, which is like, lumpy couch. Plus, it's got spirits in it, so I put a drop cloth on it and put a shamanic stitch in, so to keep the spirits from biting me. So, yep, awareness, awakenness, yep. Conscious awareness, I am. Yep, being here on point, yep. And like I said, we are at a very interesting time. Like we had this lunar eclipse, the last time that type of lunar eclipse happened was about 40,000 years ago, right? And the one that was close to kind of being like the one that happened Friday night was 2,400 years ago. And the next time we're going to have a lunar eclipse that's kind of like this will be in 2,265. So if you were consciously aware like I was last night and connected to that energy, it gave me a nice little boost, better than the COVID-19 boost, and it's pretty obvious that this whole COVID thing is here, let me play this for you. Do 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 do. Yeah, here we go.
You know why? Is this unusual among such?
Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. Dr. Jayanta Bhattacharya arrived at Stanford University as a freshman at 18 years old and never left. In addition to his undergraduate degree, Dr. Bhattacharya earned a doctorate from the Stanford Economics Department and an MD from Stanford Medical School. Dr. Bhattacharya is now a professor of health policy at Stanford Medical School and a research associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research. Jay, welcome.
Nice to meet you, Peter.
What happened and what should have happened? What happened? December 31st, 2019, the World Health Organization announces that it's tracking a cluster of pneumonia cases from an unknown source in Wuhan, China. January 11, 2020, the first novel coronavirus death is reported in China. January 21st, the first American case of COVID is confirmed in Washington State. March, on the advice of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, which includes Dr. Anthony Fauci, states in this country begin to issue stay-at-home orders. Late March and early April, the entire nation has locked down. Schools are closed. Economic activity collapses. March 24, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya publishes a piece in the Wall Street Journal. Quote, "If it's true that the coronavirus would kill millions of people without shelter-in-place orders and quarantines, then the extraordinary measures being carried out in cities and states around the country are surely justified. But there's little evidence to confirm that premise." Close quote. The whole nation has shut down. And Jay Bhattacharya pipes up and says, "Hey, fellas, explain yourself, Jay."
Sure. So actually, I have to go back a few years from that.
A few years?
Yeah. In 2009, I had done some research during the H1N1 flu epidemic.
Also originated in Asia?
It's
right?
it's. I mean, it's unclear exactly.
Oh, I see.
But in any case, it is an epidemic that's hitting the United States, and everyone's worried about what the death rate is from it. I did some research on the spread of the disease, but I'd been reading the literature on how deadly it was. So the first reports for H1N1 were really high, 4%, 5% mortality. And I noticed in the literature, there were a whole series of seroprevalence studies essentially of antibodies. And what they found was that for every case of H1N1, there were 50, 100 people that had it that they didn't identify. The public health hadn't identified.
Okay, so let's just, you know me, Jay. You know I'm very slow, and you have to go through this carefully for me to get it all. For every case, meaning every case that turns up at a hospital, every case that's identified and counted because that person gets sick,
Right.
There are some large number of asymptomatic cases where people have been infected, produced antibodies, and don't even know it. Is that correct? That's the general idea?
That's the general idea. Although
Right.
they're not necessarily asymptomatic. They might have had symptoms. They just never showed up. They weren't severe.
They never got counted. They don't turn themselves in at the doctor's office or the hospital.
Right. So H1N1 goes from 5% mortality, 4% mortality, which is what the World Health Organization was saying at the time, to 0.01% mortality on that order disease.
Once studies had been done to see the actual number of people who've been infected.
Correct.
Okay.
So it was on the top of my mind when I saw the World Health Organization in 2020 say that we have a 3% mortality rate. They were very cagey about what they meant, but I knew what they meant. They meant that 3 out of 100 people that had been identified with COVID died from it. And they were looking at Chinese data. They were looking at Italian data. And the first thought I had was, well, maybe this is like H1. It's a respiratory disease. Respiratory virus, it spreads very, very easily, obviously. It seems likely that many more people have had it than have been identified. Our testing resources weren't all that good at the time. So that was what motivated me in that piece, was we don't know the mortality rate because we don't know how many people actually have been infected. Mm-hmm. I wanted to know the denominator.
And then you, at some point in these early weeks, you and a couple of colleagues here at Stanford, as I recall, correct me on this because I'm going from memory, conducted what was one of the earliest, or perhaps the first, seroprevalence study in this country. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's one of the very first, yes.
And you learned?
So we did two, actually. We did one in Los Angeles County, and we did one in Santa Clara County, which is where Stanford is. We learned that in both LA County and Santa Clara County, there were 40 or 50 infections per case.
Anyway, I just show you these videos to, they say it a lot quicker, more authoritarian than I do. And I just, come from the Griot school of talking to you guys. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Co-creation with creator, even through script by predetermination. Well, things aren't ever predetermined, right? It's a work in progress, and it's all about co-creation. So it's nothing's predetermined. It may seem that way, but it's only because it's being coached. I remember taking my first course in demographics and statistics, and my professor said, "Okay, kids, I'm going to teach you how to lie with numbers." So nothing is, things are scripted from the construct of the social dynamic of the hidden hand. They script everything. Nothing on television or media or in history books. That's all scripted, yes, but that's all illusion, right? Within the construct of love's co-creation, nothing is scripted because you are the decider. You decide, not some boardroom guy. Zippy elliptical correcting methods. Okay. Sensei, mind over matter. Yep, pretty much. On the ball. Sensei, conscious comic consciousness. Yes. And our present political structure is the NICP, the neo-insane clown party. Let's see. Awareness, awakeness, being here now on point. Yep. Fish, okay. Let's see, where'd Fish go? Fish said something. You took the message down, Fish, before I could read it. Bob, I dig your black and white TV with remote LG. Yep. Say no to clot shots. Good video, Al. Yep. So I'm working at it, and I did 3 today. I liked that Black Library was in. So I was waiting for these folks to show up, and I thought we were going to do a council, right? A council is when you sit in a circle, and you may have a facilitator, and you basically have a gatekeeper that, as people come in, you welcome them, right? And you give them a little prayer. And there is the scribe who kind of takes notes. And there is the facilitator, and there is the grandmother's vibe watcher, the person who keeps awareness of how everyone's taking everything, right? Well, this wasn't that. This was mind control. There were 4 women who had an agenda, and we were sitting in a circle, and they didn't let anyone speak. All that they did was, it was like a Holy Roller Baptist thing, because they were playing Christian music and bouncing around and clapping hands. And, I like good, Bible music, but not, hip hop Christian music. And all they talked about were, the people who are being shot and murdered in our community, and what a loss, and how we have to, blah, 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 right? And they were taking concepts that I tried to teach them 5-10 years ago and turn them into this kind of Tavistock Institute mind control. And if you go look up the Tavistock Institute, you'll see that's where Bernays, who was the grandson or nephew Freud invented modern propaganda. That's where Goering took his cues from. And that's where Newspeak is. And that is where, the whole social media panoply of mind control is going on. It's where MK Ultra got its stuff. And these girls were doing it. They were like, just so I was sitting at the door, and everyone who came in through the door, I said, "Welcome home," and that is and I kind of, did my little shamanic um, protection sitchin on them, so they wouldn't be totally taken away, right? And there were two little kids. This one mommy had a baby that was probably somewhere between 6 and 9 months old and was in a bassinet kind of buggy. And there was a little boy who was probably 2, and he was running around. And this friend of mine, who's an artist, was trying to give basically things, prayer wheels and dream catchers, and she wasn't calling them that. She was calling them art projects that you could bring to Thanksgiving and people could work together. And she didn't describe the shamanic side of it or how it worked or what it was. She just kind of said it was a like, doing a jigsaw puzzle or something, and so the kid kept taking them apart, the ones that she had made to demonstrate. He kept pulling the strings apart, and he kept, taking all her art materials and throwing them every which way. And the mother kind of ignored the kid, like let him just, fuck it, because he wasn't a mean little kid. He wasn't doing anything. He was just a cheeky monkey, right? So he was running around and falling on top of people and breaking up whatever kind of, and the poor ladies who are like giving their little speeches and not letting anyone speak or share how they feel about stuff. They were just like running into them, tying their shoelaces together, just being the biggest. This kid was being the biggest cheeky monkey. And he kept running over to me and stopping and looking up at me and just having the most shit-eating smile on his face, like, isn't this fun? You're the only one who really appreciates. You actually can hear me think. I can think to you and tell you stuff. Hey, guess what? Before I came here, I was a grown woman who was really powerful and rich, and I was white. And now here I am, a little boy, and my mom has 6 other children from 6 different men, and we live basically in my mom's car, and they're all miserable, and I'm just a cheeky monkey having a good time, and I'm not going to be, destroyed by this experience. I'm just going to have a good time. And by the way, I'm going to grow up as a transsexual, and I'm going to have breasts. I love my breasts. And now that I'm a little boy and my clitoris is on the outside of my body, I don't like this. I'm going to become a woman again and let my mother deal with that. And all the Christian people in my family who are hypocrites. And then I'm getting this straight from the kid, right? And I'm just smiling, and he's smiling at me, and he's screaming at other, he's not, he can't really talk, but he's like taking people's keys out of their pocketbooks, and it's just the most amusing thing to watch this kid do this, and to watch these women not have any level of control, not control, but they can't lead by example, right? I mean, his kid's mother, his whole family is there. One of the ladies who's giving a speech about blah, 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 that's her grandson. And he keeps going up and kicking her in the leg, right? I just love my little, it's like, right. And then the kid in the bassinet, who's a little girl, is like staring at me going, you're the only one who can hear me. And I'm like, I'm not talking to her, but I'm like kind of, soul speaking back to her going, yep, that's right. I hear you, kid. And, you're here, the 2-year-old, you need to be his bud. You guys are in the same circle. So you get older, he's the only one you're going to relate to. Forget the rest of these folk. And they went on, and I'm not saying a word. I'm not jumping up. I'm not clapping my hands. I'm not saying glory, hallelujah, because that's all the people there. They want to speak their truth, and they're not being allowed by these four women. And the women are constantly going, "Oh, remember your truth is as valuable as mine, and you can speak it." But they were not letting them speak it. You should have allowed them to go in a circle, to And each of these women, their first little foyer of telling us the thing, they spent 10 minutes each, and then they just kept team tagging and not letting anyone speak, right? And so the only two people that I felt any connection to, or that I felt was honorable and forthright, were these two little babies, this 2-year-old and this like 6 to 9 month-year-old. And then this guy who is a state legislator came in, and he just kind of wanted to represent and see, because this was his constituency. And I have known him for years, and I would take him to things like this so he could get a sense of his constituency. So he actually showed up. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And I said, well, and he was wearing his mask. And I kind of looked in his eyes. I didn't say, is that you, Sam? But he, again, he almost soul speak to me. And so we didn't, he sat next to me, and he's like smiling, beneath his mask, and his eyes are telling him the story. And he goes to the other corner of the room and sits there, and he has crossed everything. He's sitting like this. His legs are crossed. I mean, he is like totally buttoned up, right? And then he goes to the other corner, and he's, trying to let everyone see that, hey, look, our state legislator's here, and he's representing us, and he's seeing what we're talking about. But he doesn't say anything, and he doesn't get up and clap and dance like monkeys like the rest of the folk there. And it was sad, because my friend who organized it, she actually said, she spent only 5 minutes saying, listen, we have to approach these issues we have, and we have to, think of new ways. And it was she's one of my students that I lead by example, rather than talking to her like I'm talking to you. I've always been by her side and helped her out with whatever she needed to do. She is an amazing singer, and she's a theatrical. She writes plays and performs them, and she has, in the last 5 years, trained about 100 kids who have gone on to college to study art and theater and poetry and writing, and so she's doing a great job. And that's why I support her. Anybody who can do that in their community, I'm got your back. I'm there to help you do anything that I can help you to do anything. So anyway, and I went there thinking that we were going to talk about strategy and how everyone felt about the issues of the day. Not really, because these four other women just wanted to control the scene, right? And get the attention and et cetera, and call themselves a social activist, right? And what they really were, and this is just my opinion. Don't believe a word I say. This is all here for your entertainment. They were like social vampires. They were sucking up on these people's emotions, right? And the only two people they couldn't affect, well, three, was me and the two kids, right? The rest of the people, there was a minister over there that I knew that he's, again, tries to say that he's a activist ministry. That's his thing, activist ministry. And I don't know him that well, but every time I see him, he breaks something. He had his arm in a cast. And I said, what'd you do to your arm? He goes, diabetes. And I was like, kind of through me. I tried to look at it, and all I could see was that it was, a broken arm. I could see the bones, and I could see them. They're not like my bones. My bones, I have neuropathy, and I have charcoal legs, and osteoarthritis, and that all comes from my diabetes, give or take, and other things going on in my body. And I don't need a cast. I don't need my legs cut off. I don't need any of the things that the medical model wants to do to me. And that's why I go to the doctors I do, because they're people I can talk to, I've known, and they take care of me, right? And it's a team effort. We do, we're working on Al together, right? And they again, it's a practice. They're learning more about medicine by working on me than if I wasn't there, because I'm giving them, medical feedback and giving them ideas about why don't we try this, right? So that was the very interesting thing of today. Was I again? This group was like a microcosm of what's going on in certain siloed groups of people, right? The people who are really scared, the people who have been really catastrophically affected by stress and trauma, and neglected and ignored by the state, right? And the closest thing they had to any kind of state was this guy, a state legislator, came in, and he's just there to get the 411 so he can get reelected, right? Not to really help, right? And the people who were running the thing, my friend who organized it, and she gave a good keynote speech of like under 4 minutes about culture and dynamics, and then showed my artist friend. He said, "And here's our visual artist," and she kind of said, "This is how you do it." It was like she was not very good at connecting, because up until she was a person who always organized Earth Day, and she has real nature connectivity, and she does ceremony, but she was never really politically connected, right? And so, because of her amazing talent, and I got her to start doing murals in poor neighborhoods that represented the trials and tribulations that these people are going through. And she, now she does a good deal of work there. And she, as an artist, she's really amazing, and she's really empathetic. So through her art, she can really connect. But communication, speaking, not so much. And I was at another meeting with them. The same group of people organized a gun buyback with the police, and they reached out to the police. And I keep talking to folks, gotta talk to the police. The police are your friends. If you work with them, they will do a good job. If you ignore them and do stuff, they will see you as the enemy and attack you. And they have guns, so you might as well be their friend. And so, because part of their thing is to serve and protect, not just represent the corporate structure, which they do. Anyway, so this lady tried to do what I showed her by example, by all the times I've worked with the police, and got them to be really dynamic social interactions. But I'm not here now, and so that has all. Anyway, so they try and do this, and what happens is someone in a higher position than the police have orchestrated the buyback to be the first 120 people that they have a $200 gift card for their gun. They basically, the first 200 people or 120 people, or however many people they had gift cards for, brought guns that were broken, that were rusted, that were ancient, couldn't fire anything, were not a threat. They were more or less a paperweight. And they got the gift cards. And then the people behind, who actually had guns that they took from their kids, who were gangbangers and things that could kill people, they brought in about 60 guns, and those people got arrested for having a gun that wasn't registered. And even and the real amazing thing is that our state doesn't need to have your gun registered. So they arrested these people just because they were poor and black and poor and white. And that totally destroyed whatever little bit of hope of having trust in the police, right? And so I was at a meeting about this, and my friend was going, "We shouldn't talk about this. We should talk about how we can love the police." And I'm going, no. There's something rotten in Denmark here. This was, definitely orchestrated thing to totally screw whatever point of reference that the public could have confidence in the and trust in the police, and this is just another part of the hidden hands agenda to screw with. I mean, they are desperate. They are losing. They will be out of power in less than 40 years. But between now and then, could be quite nasty. I mean, these guys are so nasty, they wouldn't think twice in starting a nuclear war to wipe out 3/4 of the population, and they'd be happy as a clam in their underground reptile cities. So, but it hasn't happened. Meaning, one reason I worked in the early O's for the and made some money and had a good time and of excess, and was that I'm pretty sure that things are going to end like poof, and so I've already put in a good 50 years of being the guy who's trying to help, and still the guy who's helping, but I'm not expecting any miracle. But I mean, I've seen a lot of miracles. There's a great book called The Course in Miracle, and I would suggest all of you cadre there to give it a read. It's online. You don't have to buy it. You can take a look at it, right? Another good is Bloom's. He's written a number of really good books on the runes. The runes are a very good divination tool. And a divination isn't any worse, devil worshiping anything. It is using the construct of the energetics of love's co-creation to pull on as a thread of seeing the tapestry of what's going on. It's just the ability to see what's going on right in front of your face, right? And as dark journalist, he likes X. Oh, I can't even pronounce it. It starts with an A. And really check out, dark journalist. He's quite good. So there are a bunch of you there. Jane and Spirit and JC and Fish from Tennessee. Fish from Tennessee, you're different from Divine Fish or Fish Divine, or I mean, there are a number of fish in our cadre. So magic is just a tool, and if you look at it as anything other than a tool, and that's the Muslim folk don't like iconology, worshiping a statue, right, or a thing. And so any of the divination tools, astrology, runes, tarot cards, tea leaves, they're tools. They're like a hammer or a saw. They aren't a magic device, right? And spells and herbal remedies, again, they're tools. They're not a religion. They're not something to bow down to, it's a tool. That's all it is. I mean, all the things I do, it's tools. I can listen to a baby talk to me. It's a tool, meaning by setting my consciousness, taking away the disbelief. I live in suspension of disbelief. I don't believe in anything, and I don't disbelieve in anything, right? All I do is have faith in love's co-creation. And when I see something coming from that motif of truth, love's co-creation, well, I'm down with it. I have no problem with it. And so, and the devil, the devil is not what you think the devil is. Basically, Jesus Christ and Beelzebub or Satan or the illuminated one, they're twins. It's just that Satan came a little, when you have twins, one comes first, the next one comes second, right? It just happens to be the space between the two were like, a few 100,000 years or a million years or however you want to measure it. So what I want you to is to use these tools and not, worship them, and people who, get into, oh, I'm a druid, oh, I'm a a witch, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. Well, you really want to be that? Pretty limiting, you know. Now, to use those skills and for love's co-creation to serve the betterness of all our relations. See, guys, the real deal about life, it's not about your life, is not about you. It's about the we and me. And every day in every way, I take the piece of the earth and make it stronger for all my relations, not just me, for everybody, everything. 9 generations behind me and 9 generations in front of me. That's what I'm consciously am aware of. What my conscious intent is to serve love's co-creation, right? To bring peace on earth. It already is here. It's just the meager little disruptions of a few morons, the hidden hand. I mean, I'm talking about less than 2,000 people who have who think it's their right and that this planet is theirs, that we are just their slaves, and it's not. I'm sorry. We're all in this together. And if you want to see what happens with that, go watch the movie Zardos with the guy who played the first James Bond, Sean Connery. In the 70s, when he quit being Bond, he didn't want to get typecasted. He did a whole bunch of interesting films like A Man Who Would Be King, Time Bandits, Zardos, Everything You Know Is Wrong, a whole bunch of very interesting films. So, what else can I say? Oh, come on. Give me some inspiration here, cadre. There's at least 5 of you there, so you're doing pretty good here, Jane was being quite prolific. Let's see. Let's go up to the top. Let's see. Who Jane was? Jane Tones was the first, and then there's Fish from Tennessee, and Jane took down a message. She took down 2 messages. She kept taking down messages before I even read them. Again, talking about, so that means she's concerned about not wanting what she's thinking to be, sent across the internet. So, Janie Poo, you can get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42. You can do that right now. Let's see. I'm going to go on to my Gmail account and see if anybody is trying to get a hold of me. Boop, boop, boop. And let's see. Who's on there? Laura Eisenhower. She's quite a good extra. Let's see. Crone. Griot Publishing. Let's see what's on there. That's my little spot. Nope, not even there. Babylon 5. Chris Hedges. He's always quite interesting. You should read his books. He had The Farewell Tour was a really good book. Cornel West, another good person. David Bowie, my good buddy. David Icke, another interesting guy. David Icke I met at a Whole Life Expo in '91 in New York, and I said, that guy, he's something interesting, And he put up with a ton of guff, and he focused on writing his books, and they were a little repetitive, but still the stories he told were straight up. The information he gave was excellent. And he's not even a scholar. He was a rough and ready soccer player. Then he became a sports presenter on the BBC. Then he was in South America for the World Cup, and he had a few days, and he went out in the woods, and he met a shaman, and that was the beginning of his change of heart. Doctor Who is my favorite. Well, there's a let's see what this lady's Dr. Catherine. She worked at CERN, and she got a little concerned with what was going down.
And then it kind of stopped, and there was always this like low level, once or twice per term, some weird people would turn up somewhere, and something would happen that I now know is called street theater. And it's an Intel device where they set memory anchors along the way, and then they can start working with that. So in other words, I have been a human experimentation subject by Intel from the year 2000, the moment I started at Oxford, for sure. So I think...
Do you have any idea why they would have selected you to be an Intel target and such intense surveillance?
I think, well, I can only guesstimate. So number one, it's not about surveillance. They know everything about me already. It's
about
making money off human trafficking. So I believe I have been certainly trafficked for human research. I will talk later about how the fact that I'm totally head to toe chipped. So that's number one, human experimentation. That's Oxford doing. The other thing is also sex trafficking, because I've been sex trafficked to people, not with rape, but with remote controlled rape through my chips that I have, and many, many other things. And I think
are you talking about virtual or high?
Now this, you'd say, oh, this girl is nuts, but she is a respected Oxford, scientist who worked at CERN in high energy plasma. Somebody you wouldn't think would be, sex trafficked, but, you have to suspend your disbelief. You hear or see things, you don't believe them and you don't disbelieve them, right? I don't believe in anything. I just have faith in love's co-creation, right? Data man, dark journalism. Yep. And I like Stark journalism. That's kind of good too. Let's see. Check out Gaia. Yeah, as a TV station, they have some pretty good shows there, I have to admit. But again, they are owned by, whoever, whatever corporation they're owned by. And it's like the CIA's, TSA, divulsion of, flying saucer information, which is, totally, look that away, So how does it work? Co-creation. How does it work? Let's see. That's a good one. Co-creation first comes with your conscious intent. I am. You consciously intend to co-create with love's co-creation. Next thing is you have to kind of understand what love's co-creation is, and that is it's simply a work in progress. So everything you do, from wiping your ass, brushing your teeth, going to work, whatever you do, everything you do in every day in every way, you take the piece of the earth and make it stronger, right? And you do it with conscious intent. You just don't do it like 40% of every day. I am a moron, but that means 60% of that day I'm doing okay. I have conscious intent. I'm awake. I'm on the bop. I'm on the beam. I'm, doing my best. Whenever I do anything, I don't just say, "Oh, I'm just gonna, fuck it." Gonna eat more, ding dongs. No, I do my best. And that means I think twice about everything I do before I do it. I measure things twice before I do it. I understand and how I'm going to do it, because otherwise I'm not doing my best. Now, I can screw up because I may not, be the brain scientist that I should be. and I may lose or forget a few things. As you can tell, when I talk to you, I forget names and places and things and go, who was that guy again? So Stanley Kubrick, that's a guy I love. He's my number one director, but 40% of the time I can't remember who that guy is, right? I have to use my mind castle technique. And the mind castle, it's like I don't quite have photographic memory. I have a good memory. I have an endemic memory. I can remember a lot of stuff through what I feel, through what I hear, and not so much hearing it, but endemic memory is like you're 6 and above. You're not you're overstanding it, not understanding it. You're looking at things from the top of the mountain rather than from the valley. So you want to know how to co-create. You use all those techniques, right, that I just mentioned, right? And you kind of amalgam them into your presence. And it's not like you're studying it and it's over here. And that's how schoolwork is mostly. It's outside of your body. But if you bring that information inside of you, right, through your Akashic record, and there are a number of you that have been studying with me now for this year, right? What happens is, fish is one of the people been around, and there's many different fish. There was one fish who came to visit me in here, and she brought her boyfriend, and they wanted to get married, but they didn't have the money. They couldn't do it. So I took them to some place in the woods, and I married them, right? You are now, not by the state, but by this tree. By the authority given to me by this plant, you are now husband and wife, right? Now treat yourself as good as this tree treats the whole forest, basically was my Tim on them. So they did that, and as far as I know, they're still happy. That was a good 2 years ago. And but this year I've had at least 50 people who have contacted me first on the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, and we started talking, and then they gave me their phone number, and I gave them my phone number, and if they were in America, we kind of talked to each other, and if they were in Europe, I used WhatsApp. So I have 50 of those folk, and out of that 50, 10 of them are really consciously aware. They have listened to what I said, they've taken it to heart, my example, and they have basically, there's 5 of them that are, they are most of the time they're in state. They can do, chew gum and walk at the same time. And a lot of people go, oh, I have this other guru I listen to, and they would give me the link, and I hit the link, and these people don't talk about anything except, oh, we can offer you enlightenment, blah blah blah. If you pay $300 and become one of our gold, members, you can, well, please, all of my teachers told me that you cannot charge for this work. This is service. You're doing it in service to love's co-creation. You're not doing it to make a living. But if someone wants to give you a present, no problem. Like I told you, my car was about to kill me, and I made it here, to Virginia, on the border of West Virginia. And I have a car. My car has always kind of mostly been serviced at the Firestone. I'm giving them a heads up, and they do a pretty good job. And the other thing about Firestone is that they're everywhere. So my car is in their computer base. So if I have a problem in Florida or Colorado or California, that Firestone will take care of me, as well as the guys in Virginia or the guys in Tennessee or the guys in Arkansas, the different places I've been hanging out in lately. Anyway, so I took it to the guys here and near West Virginia, and because it wasn't, I didn't even know if it was going to make it to Roanoke. I finally landed at the farm and was with my friend, and she said, "Oh, there's a Firestone just, like 4 or 5 miles over there." And I said, "Okay, I'll go there." And yes, there I was in their computer. And so they treated me like every other Firestone I've ever been to. And they were nice and competent. And so they looked at my car and they told me everything that was wrong with it. And they said, "Well, that'll be, $2,800. I said, "Well, how much is the oil change?" They said, "That's $35." I said, "Okay, change the oil." So they did that. And I went to a restaurant, and a friend who lived between here and there, close enough to come visit me at the restaurant. I hadn't seen him in a while. So I gave him a call the day before and said, "I'm going to be over at that Firestone. And I think there's a little strip mall nearby that has a couple of restaurants in it. And maybe we meet up." He said, "Oh, yeah, there's a Chinese place there that's pretty good." So we met at the Chinese place and we're talking for about an hour, and the phone rings. And it's the Firestone guy. He goes, I'm having a hard time to explain this to you." And I said, "Well, just say it." He goes, "Well, I told you that your car needed $2,800 to be fixed, right? And you gave me 35, and we were changing the oil. And then the computer showed that somehow $2,000 got into the account to fix the car. Just like how much money do you have in your check, in your debit card?" And I said, like $100, and I'm giving you 35 of it to change. Said, "Well, we're going to do at $2,800. We're just going to do it and take the $2,000." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, there's a few things we can't. It's a bit too expensive, so we're not going to do that. But we're going to do more than $2,000. We're going to, almost fix your car. It'll be a lot safer." So how much safer? He said, "About 80% safer than it was when you drove it in here." And he goes, "It's just because I am just so blown away. We cannot figure out where that $2,000 came from or how it got into that account, but it's there, and we're going to fix your car." So that's how we got my car fixed. And so now my car isn't 100%, it's about 80%. And in the National Electric Code book, there is a place, they have a little part for that, and it's called safe but inadequate. So my car is safe but inadequate, So the wheels won't fall off, the engine will keep going. They put 4 new tires on and balance them and all that stuff. And so it is what it is. That's how I roll. I have no idea where that came from, but the universe decided that Al is going to be on the bop servicing the needs of Love's co-creation. So you might, better not let him die in a car crash of the wheels falling off the car. So that's how that went down. And that's, if you read the Course in Miracles, Course in Miracles says there is no difference between big miracles and little miracles. They're all miracles, right? If you can find your car keys, that's a freaking miracle, right? So Detroit Firestone, yeah. Being present, yeah. Let's see where people are. Okay, it's AC. That's Divine Fish. Mm-hmm. Blue. Hello, Blue. Jane. Oh, I made a typing mistake. Yes, I do it all the time. It always works out for the best. Yes. So I have a great story about this. I don't know if you've been noticing my hygiene, but I have a new neighbor out there in the deep green. I mean, not new. I mean, he's just down the road, down at the end of the cul-de-sac, a mile or two. But he has to drive across my front lawn to get to his place. He has the right of way to do it. It's not a road. The moron who put this thing where I live together decided he wanted to have a house over there, and so he just wrote it into my deed. I mean, 15 years before I bought it. So anyway, that was there. And so, it doesn't really bother me. It's just one family at the end there, so it's not like tons of traffic. But this guy I could go on forever about him. But so he sees me a good deal because I'm out there puttering around. I don't go anywhere. He drives, he can't stand being where he is. So I don't even know how long he's going to last there. But anyway, so he drives by, and he's kind of inattentive. And he would always say, "You're such a mess. Your hair is, I can't believe, And so one day he showed up at my deck of my lodge, and said, and he had his little tools of barberry. He goes, "Can I just cut your hair? It make me happy." And so this guy, you wouldn't want this guy to be unhappy with you. So I said, "Well, as a favor to you, I really don't need it, but sure." So he totally clipped. My hair was really long. I mean, when I let it, it would be out here, and I had a really rat tail braid in the back of my head, and my beard was like out to here. And so he just clipped, and I had a forest coming out of my nose and out of my ears. That's why my last or latest novel is called Ear Hair. And so I said, "Okay, you can touch." And he did, clip I told him not to touch my eyebrows, but he tried to even them out, but he didn't do such a good. But he did cut my beard and cut all this off, and it made him so happy. I said, "So now that I let you cut my hair, you owe me about 5 favors, right? I made you happy. You better make me happy. Don't do, you know what I mean?" And so he said, "Yeah, okay, yeah." But so I'm not there. So anyway, so Detroit Firestone, Miracles by, it's not by anybody. It's A Course in Miracles. And it's, a autonomic written thing. There is a lady who this book goes back eons, and there is a person who did kind of get it published. So she took not the responsibility, but I bundled all this stuff together, but she didn't write it. It's a autonomic writing. Ellie, good to see you, EE. Always good to see you all in the cadre. I just listened to Wayne Dyer's audiobook, The Art of Manifesting, yesterday. Great book. Yeah, Dyer's pretty good guy. Yeah. Free will. Yeah. Your choice, whether you feed into any narrative. There will always be truth in either or the narrative. Right? If you want to be a good liar, you got to do it with truth. Like I said, go check out the Tavistock Institute. It's the father of mind control and propaganda. And so the way to not be, what free will is. You are, when I still do ask this question, what are you guys? And some people, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a school teacher, I'm a fireman. No, that's your gender, that's your job. I'm a homosexual, that's your sexual orientation. Those aren't what you are. You're not your body. This is an avatar. What you are in this present time and space is you are the decider. We were given free will because we are the reflection of the burning bush, who is the physical representation of God. And I don't like using that word because it's a Sumerian word for scumbag. So I don't use that word. I just wanted to use it as a reference point. And so the burning bush, when Moses asked the burning bush what his name was, he didn't reply, as King James said, "I am who I am." And the only person who says that is Popeye the Sailor Man. What the burning bush replied was, "I am a work in progress." And pointing at Moses, he said, "You are my reflection. I know what I am when I see you." And that's the only place where I know what I am when I look at you. So that's what we are. We are the reflection of the work in progress. And that's why we are a part of love's co-creation. And that's why we were given free will, because we weren't given free will, then the burning bush wouldn't have a clear reflection on where to go next, right? To be that work in progress. Blue Daisy, right, Daisy? I just listened. Okay, Wengar, Ellie says free will. Blue goes, great I am. The great I am, right? And the I am is all our relations, right? The great I am is the we in me, right? And we are that great I am. Conscious intent, I am, conscious awareness, I am. Conscious any fill in the blank, I am, right? It's a prayer. It's a sit-in, right? It's a way of manifesting, right? Without having to go through a ton of the stuff that Wayne Dyer talks about. So, but, if there isn't any one tale, Wayne Dyer is just another griot, telling a story. And if you can identify with what he's saying, and that brings you to that place of realization that you are the decider, that you are the reflection of the work in progress, that you are the we and me, that you are a representation of all our relations. That's everybody. That's every scaled, finned, feathered, crystalline consciousness in the universe. We are their relations. We're connected. And I live in a forest, and it's a rainforest. So they're different. And I live at the bottom of the cul-de-sac of the holler. So it used to be the real muddy, gicky, watery, place. And I put a lot of drainage in. And so there are two sides of my little beautiful haven that have been chewed up by the big rushing waters. And so you can look, it's like a side cut. It's like a CAT scan of the forest. And it's so you see all of these roots and phylum and what you really see is the mushrooms. And they are a tapestry, a spider's web interconnected to every frigging plant in that forest. It's like the telephone line of the forest. And when one tree gets sick, other trees come to its aid. It's truly amazing. And you can see this in this cutaway of the property. And it's been that way since I've been there, and that's 20 years. And it's like I go over there, I've made a nice little meditation platform, right? So when I sit in it, I am surrounded by roots and fungus and everything foresty. And I fit right in, I'm like a root. I'm like a mushroom. I'm like a leaf, and it talks to me, yeah, mycocilium. Yep, that's exactly it, Blue. Yep, you got it. And so I am part of the mycocilium, and that's why I love being there, right? And I have all these prayer platforms all over my 3.5 acres that are because this area is so energetic. I mean, I have a ley line that goes right through my property, and it's not like 1,800 feet underground. It's like right there on top of it. It's like a gigantic railroad rail, but it's 20 feet high and 8 feet wide, and it goes God knows how further deep underneath. And I brought in a geologist and a materials handling scientist and they came in their little truck that had, all kinds of drills and lasers and radar devices and all kinds of computers, and they couldn't drill into it. They couldn't, when they shot a laser at it, hoping to get it to splay so, the different colors would come out, and then they could use their spectrometer to tell me what was it made out of. It wouldn't do it. It just kind of sucked up the laser. It didn't reflect it. It didn't get burnt. It just a laser hit it, and there was not even a dent in this stone, rock, rail, whatever, right? And they couldn't figure out what it was made out of. They couldn't get anything to take back to their lab. They couldn't scrape it. They couldn't drill it. They couldn't do anything to get a representation of what this thing was. But it's a ley line, right? I brought in a friend of mine who's a Cherokee shaman, and he said, "Oh yeah, this is a ley line." He says, "I've never seen one on top of the ground, and nothing as big as this. This is pretty amazing." And it goes right through my property, right in the middle, the whole length of it, just right through it. And where I sleep is lined. I placed my little man cave right in, north-south to it. So I get the whole energetic blast of it when I sleep. And that's one thing that kind of keeps me healthy is, and, where I'm sleeping now, it's okay. It's warm at least, but I'm not in the microphylum. And around here, it's sad to say that it is pretty much any place where there's a large mass of humans. People are going, "Oh, it's our carbon footprint. It's terrible. Oh, it's Earth." No, not so much the carbon footprint. Now, the crap we pump into our environment is not good, but the real effect we do is our energetics. It's our soul. It's our meat puppet consciousness, and it's the lack of consciousness, really. So, what does Blue say here? That's very cool. I haven't found a good map of ley lines in Alberta where I live. Well, I'm sure the internet is amazing for having information like that. It has every kind of information. And I would say that if you were to, ley lines, Alberta, Canada, you would at least get a point of reference to go down the rabbit hole. That's really what I use the internet for. I don't believe anything on the internet, but it's a good pointer. It's like a divining rod. Blue, you need to, the best divining rods. If you're old school, you cut a piece of wood where, it makes like a wishbone, and, but what I like to use is back in the day when I would get my shirts pressed, I would send it off to this laundry, and certain shirts they would press and fold and put in a box. But other things like sweaters and stuff like that, they put on hangers. And I'm old enough when they had metal hangers, right? And what I would do is I would clip off the little twirly part that you put on the rod in your closet. And I would clip that off, and then I clip it in half, and then I would bend what was the two parts left of the triangle into an L. And they would fit in my hands, and the longer part would swivel back. And it was perfect. And you just loosely hold them, and you'd walk around, and it would point to whatever you were looking for. Ley lines, water, you name it. And that's called dowsing. And if you could find yourself some metal hangers, cheapo from a laundry, metal hangers, like I said, you can just clip off the top part, the little hooky part, and then cut in the middle, and then bend them into L's, one part longer and the other is short to fit in your hands, and just walk around, and it will just do this. And when the thing comes together like that, that's what you're looking for. Right there is where you find water. And I've doused many a well. I had at the school, I had to put in a well and get off the shared well, right? And I wanted to do that because if I ever sold that place again, having my own water is a big plus. And controlling my own water so some fool won't, poison it is another plus. So when the well guy showed up, so you want it right here. I said, no. I spray painted an X. I said, see that X? That's where Yeah, but that's where you'd want to park your car. No, you don't want to put it there. I said, no, right? I mean, by, the county's thing, regs of how far from the house it has to be. This is perfect. I've doused this. He goes, you douse that? That's ridiculous. And I was, the school's on top of a hill, and all of the other wells are about 1,200 feet to, the water table, right? So he's charging me $20 a foot, right? So he's, 1,200 feet times $20. That's, a few $1,000s. I like close to 15 grand, 20 grand, right? So I douse this thing. He drills down, and in 40 feet, he hits an artesian well, and the water shoots out like, and he is pissed because he's had to drag his gigantic big, well machine up my, stream bed of a driveway for 2 miles. And instead of getting 20 grand, 20 times 40 feet is what? 2 times, that's like $800. So instead of getting $20,000, he got 800. And in that price of $20 a foot this way was also the cost of him digging a ditch to my house, putting in a pipe and a wire to the pump, the cost of the pump, and the cost of the pressure tank. So instead of paying him $20,000, I paid him $800 for all of that, right? And he was pissed. And and I had signed a contract that said such. And so he dug the ditch, and I wasn't there for him putting the pipe and wire in, and he put in a way too small wire. It should have been a number 10 UF cable, and he put in 14 just Romex. And before he even left, the Romex burnt itself out, right? So he had to dig the ditch again, and then I was there watching him. Yeah, I said, it said in the contract, number 10, 3-conductor UF, means direct burial cable. And so I watched him do everything that the contract said, right? So he had to dig the ditch twice. He had to replace the wire. And, so, and in that time, I paid him an extra $200 above the $20 a foot to get the highest grade, best a pump that he had, right? And he didn't do that either. He got the cheapest shit thing and thinking I wouldn't notice it. And when he, had to pull the well up to get the shitty wire that he put in, I saw that he had to, I said, where is the, 3000X pump? He said, well, I just thought you would. I said, no, I paid you $200 extra for that. Go get that. So he had to go get that. And the pump that he had put down there kind of was spoiled by the short in the wire he put. I mean, everything went wrong with this guy. But he finally, when the job was done, it was great. And I only had to pay him $800. And I gave him another $200, like to round it off to 1,000. So it was like a gesture of goodwill. I said, fuck that. And he left cursing me, and he did not get down the road too well. And he cracked the axle of his big well drilling machine, and he left it there for a number of months, and the county towed it away. And so that was the last, he went into alcoholism, drug addiction, divorce, and the whole thing because he was a rotten guy. And he had ripped people off, but not me, because the hill protected me, right? And that was so that was me dowsing the correct place to put it. And you too can douse. It's pretty simple stuff. Not a good map. I found it. Oh, there you go. You found the map. Yep. Definitely have metal hangers. Okay, there you go. In my garage. I just saw them today. See, that's kind of fortuitous. That's how, conscious awareness works, right? Yeah, willow branches are good, but it's really, you have to find the right willow branch. Has to be a certain shape, blah 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 blah, and you really have to know what you're doing. Whereas the metal hangers, there it is. You just clip it, bing, 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 and the metal really works better than, I mean, old school willow branches. They didn't have metal hangers back in the day, but I've done both, right? And for me, anyway, I can just talk about me. It seems to work a lot easier because the hangers just kind of fit in your hands. You're not even clutching. You just kind of do this so they can hang in there, and they move very freely this way. Whereas the willow branch has to be the energy. You really have to be highly tuned because it pulls it down. I've done it and I felt it, and I felt it pulling it down, but it never had a kind of feel that it talked to me. I could feel it. I could see how it works, but it never worked as really well as that. And everybody's different. You know, some people, the guys who taught me how to douse were definitely old school, right? And the oldest of the two was definitely Mr. Willowbranch, and the other guy, who was his grandson, was in his 30s, was, because the willow, and all the willow ones the grandfather had, he had like this collection of them. Like musicians have guitars, he had dowsing rods, and so that was his thing. And the kid was all about the metal hanger that he would just clip. He said, "Where I go, I can buy anything. Bing, bing, bing. There it is. It works great." So everybody's different, and there is no definitive. You're the decider. Whichever works for you is what works for you. And we have metal hangers in the closet. Artisan well, yeah. Wow, lucky. Not luck, I doused it, and the hill wanted me to have it. You make your luck, and, luck is just being aware of the situation, right? Sounds like karma bit him back for his behavior. Yeah, pretty much, and that happened, me. But I'm at the supermarket and the cashier gives me a dime more and I notice it, I have to give him back. Otherwise, I'll go out in the parking lot and I'll get hit by a truck. My karma is like, way. So I always have to be a good boy. And I'm a moron. I mean, I'll go into the Dollar Tree and I will, don't have any glasses to read the stuff I'm looking for or even see it. So I'll just go over there and stick it. And there'll be like this cardboard thing here and another little plasticky thing over here and a little dot over there. And I'm looking around looking for stuff and I buy a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm still wearing those things with a paper cardboard thing here and the plastic thing there and a little dot there. You'd think the cashier would notice, hey, you didn't pay for that. No, I've done that. I don't know how many times. Also, I try on a hat, a baseball cap or a woolen cap or whatever, and I'll put it on. I'll forget I have it on my head. When I get home and I go, oh, wow, I go back and I pay them, right? Now, the manager of the Dollar Tree where I go to has been amazed that I come and constantly pay for the stuff I absentmindedly takes away. So he is not worrying about me stealing stuff. But one time, I was doing that, and I said, the other day I put a hat on my head, and I walked out. And the manager's over there. He's just kind of chuckling. But the guy in the line says, "What are you, stupid? You got away with it. Why did you?" And I looked at him, and I said, "Buddy, no. I have this thing called, self-worth and integrity. I'm not going to steal shit for $1. I'm going to lose my integrity for my self-worth for $1? You got to be kidding me. No. And that's why that manager has great respect for me, and everyone in that shopping mall has heard that story a couple of times. Plus, there's a Food Lion there that I go to. And I constantly do, I can't see very well. I can't reach to, that's why I always tell the clerk, hey, can you do me a favor and just take the stuff out of the cart and put it on your little, just use a little wandy thing. And, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. Because I can leave things in the bottom of that cart and I don't notice it till I get out in the parking lot. And by that time, there's a big long line and I go back and, pay them the next time I go through. So pretty much where I live, everyone kind of knows that, I have my limitations. I can see well enough to get around, to drive. If I drive during the day, don't drive early in the morning or late at night, or when there's a big, really bright and then dark. That kind of skitzes out my eyes. So anyway, everyone, wherever I live, everyone knows me. They know that I will give you my shirt off my back. I will take care of you. I will help you with whatever I can help you with it. But I have my parameters, and they understand this, and that's why wherever I live, whatever city I live in, everyone gets to know me. I do a favor for them, and they're always very generous. And they go, well, how much do I owe? I said, nothing, And like the neighbor of my friend's farm, I was fixing her stuff, and he's been a very good neighbor since her husband died, and he's worked taking care of things on the farm for him. And anyway, so he saw me fixing stuff, and I could tell that he was going, oh, this guy seems to know what he's saying. He didn't say anything about it. He didn't ask me anything, but my friend said, oh, yeah, he's got some electric problems. And I said, okay. So I went over to him the other day and said, hey, when he was like right there, and I let the dogs run around, and it was like they nearly knocked him over. They were jumping up on him like, let's play. And I just said, hey, like that. And they stopped and sat. He goes, what did you do to those dogs? No, we can get these dogs to be. How'd you do that? And I said, I am the alpha dog. I've known these guys mostly since they were puppies, like that big. And, I made that connection with them way back when. And every time, I haven't been at that place for at least 6 months. And, even the guys who were little guys when I was there last, when my car drove up, they all, a couple of them were free and easy, but the others were all tied up. And I just got out of the car and walked over to them and lifted my finger, and they all sat down. I unhooked them, and I said, come over to the car. And I had a big bag of tennis balls and my lacrosse stick. And I just started throwing the balls every which way. And they were in seventh heaven. And they ran around. Some of them came back and put the ball in my lacrosse stick, and I threw it for them. But the other ones went under a tree and just ate the tennis ball. So, and I was good with that. I didn't get upset. And that's why those dogs listen to me. Anyway, so I went over to the guy and said, hey, tell me what's your electric problem. So he showed him to me, and, I didn't even take the covers off of things. I just kind of, felt, did my Jedi electrician trick and said, yeah, I know it's wrong. And I said, I'll come over the next day and you can make me breakfast and I'll fix all your problems, which I did. And he goes, how much do you want for that? And I said, nothing. You made me breakfast. He said, but if I call an electrician, I said, yeah, they'd probably charge you $1,000, but I'm not going to charge you $1,000 because you're my friend's neighbor and you've been really good to her, and I really appreciate that. And you made me breakfast. So he's been making me breakfast every time he says, hey, come on in for breakfast. I just made some, so I let him do that. I don't go, oh, I don't need to, oh, no. I accept his hospitality, right? And that is one of the major tenets of Islam. It's not about cutting people's heads off. It's about hospitality. If you read the Quran, it's about hospitality. Sharia law seems to be pretty strict, but it's only strict because they wanted it to be so strict that you wouldn't enforce it. Killing someone for jaywalking. No, it is to make the person realize and respect themselves and their community, but they don't, they don't enforce it. Only wackos, who aren't really Islamic, go wacko on this stuff because they aren't. The basic tenet of Islam is hospitality. I visited many Islamic countries over my lifetime, and I have many Islamic friends in the cities. Like Roanoke is like the microcosm of the world because they have a slice of every pie. That town has 2 Sikh temples. The city of like 200,000 has 2 Sikh temples. Not what can I say? There's some beautiful old willow trees, but I promised them I'd never cut their branches. Right. So use, metal hangers. It's like I said, there are old time folk who really are down with that and do it well. But when I hung out with those 2 Dowser guys, the old guy, showed me his way of doing it. And I wasn't doubtful or, oh, I can't do that. I didn't cut anything down. I just used the willow dowsing rods he had, and I could feel what it was doing. When he was showing it to me and how to do it, I could feel it. It's not like, oh, this doesn't work. I didn't say, oh, this couldn't work, but I could feel it. But when his grandson then showed me how easy it was to just snip up 2 metal, one metal hanger into 2 dowsing rods, and how it worked for me, because I'm Mr. Metallic, Mr. Electric, Mr. Conduit, so you're right. Blue, you have a relationship with your trees and you're being kind and you're not going to cut their little limbs. Now, I find plants give me their whatever, and again, it's when a plant or an animal gives. If you ever watched the movie Avatar, Jimmy's movie Avatar, which I thought was an excellent movie, and the girl princess, because of the jarhead's ignorance about the relationship of animals, and he startles an animal to a point where the princess, shoots it with an arrow that takes it down, but then goes straight up to it and prays over it and thanks it for offering itself up to them, and she, dispatches the animal immediately so it doesn't suffer. Now that is a good example of how to be in balance with nature. Not to, if nature offers you something, you accept. If anybody offers you something, you need to be humble enough to accept the gift. That's what it's about. It's not about transactionalism. It's about respect. Yep, wonderful movie. Yep, I love that movie. And I love films that affect the observer emotionally, and then get them to think, and then change their life. And Stanley Kubrick's films did that. The guy who did Gangs of New York, his directorial, Quentin Tarantino's films do that. I really, really, really loved Django. I thought that was one of the my top movie of what slavery and oppression is about, and it was a great movie. Well, any more questions? We're now into our second hour and of stream of consciousness. And let's see. So you think of some more things to say on the chat while I look at something else to throw down on the... Come on. Here's that physicist scientist, and she's wearing,
Okay, I just would like to record. I've got an audio recorder here on the side that has been running now for half an hour. I just would like to record that I am still in my study, okay?
She's wearing tinfoil hat.
Reflectors all around me. I've got the windows covered up. There's reflectors. That's pretty much. Can you see everywhere in my room? Trying to block the shots from the neighbors. But nevertheless, they seem to have drones that are flying all night long. And so now the drones, I was trying to record the sound of the drones, but they never stop. It's just like non-stop helicopter sounds above the house. And I was machine gunned brutally. So a helmet was just not enough. I had to literally cover with, this is pretty, as you can see how rigid this is. This is pretty thick alu. So I had to cover alu over the laptop and my head, and I was still shot in the stomach at some point. So, you know, they're loud bangs, these things are...
So, you know, your average person, this girl, she's wearing a tinfoil hat. She's totally whacked. No, she's actually, a particle physicist. You know, this is like her bailiwick. There must be ley lines or something here, because everyone who comes here never wants to leave. Yes, I know. I was home the first time I put on the property. Yes, that happens to me that's what I felt when I, first stepped on the lodge. That's what I felt when I first was on the hill. And I've lived in many, many other places in Ireland, places in England. Surrey County is quite... So these places all have not just ley lines, but they have, the whatever you call that, mycelium, right? And that there's this, what I call all our relations. We're all interconnected, right? Now, there's certain places that are just so putrefied and contaminated by the, fascist corporate state of commerce. We weren't put on this planet to be merchants, So things seem like that girl has to wear, tinfoil hat like that. That's, pretty freaking amazing. What time is it? What time is it? Oh, it's 11:30.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. And Olivia, welcome to the soft parade. Yes. Feeling very late 60s. A lot of protests going on around the world, and of course, they just have Stepford Biden. Amazing. This guy has some of the lowest rankings of any president in history. It's the disastrous 8 months in. But it's not just Stepford Biden. It's that whole entourage of politicians trying to push this mandate stuff, and it's just not going to fly.
Nothing feels real anymore.
It's true. From the media to the politicians. Mm-hmm. And so we get into a kind of unreal atmosphere as we go. But tonight we're going to get into something very special, which is X Series 109. And this is very important because we're going to be dealing with what we're calling the Sun King. The Sun King covers 3 different areas here. You might recall an episode we just did on Pasadena magic. I actually refer to this. This is really part 2 of this episode. Because we got into Caltech in Pasadena. And one of the things I want the X series to do is to give us a new X geography of things. I point this out sometimes, but very often when we're looking at things on the alternative research side, you basically, you get Nevada and Area 51. You get different places to look at. And these places were, in fact, in the vanguard of secrecy as far as government programs were concerned. But there's a lot that they left off the board that we're putting on the map. For example, Moon, Pennsylvania, which I hear Bob Dylan is doing a concert at November 15th. How odd is that, considering we've been bringing him up and all the troubles that he's been having with them, saying, he has this case now of these accusations from 1965. But before that, about 6 months before that, his entire back catalog had been bought out, and we raised the possibility on this program when we were looking at the kind of Laurel Canyon aspect of some of these things that have been happening, that they could have been buying that out on purpose to keep it in a kind of museum type state so that they can remove it from access. And you have to wonder, why would they do that? Why Bob Dylan? And then I started looking into it, and there were more and more artists from this era. And so we got into this idea that they really are holding back this idea of when freedom has been raised and when people challenge the establishment. They want to be able to craft that into something else.
They want no counterculture.
Yes.
They want a monoculture.
Yes, exactly. And that's their goal, is the centralization, this one voice, and then they can say, oh, you have all this diversity, but you can't think differently from us.
But you can look different.
That's the ultimate
You
contradiction.
can have purple hair. You could be any weight. You could be 450 pounds. It doesn't matter.
But can you have purple hair? This is the real question. This is really important, and it does play in with all of this, because so much of the Pasadena part, which is the ex-geography that we're putting on the map with this, which includes Caltech, it includes George Hodel and the Black Dahlia murders. It includes, the whole Laurel Canyon aspect. It all is well encompassed around this geography, and we're going to find out what the setup was for that, and all those things are connected in a very unusual way, as we've been pointing out. But the Sun King aspect is very important because it goes deep into the ancient Egyptian roots of the mystery schools and what the people behind Caltech, both in the right-hand schools and the left-hand schools, were moving out into the culture. And it's a
and that's kind of where I come from. My roots in esoterica comes from the mystery schools. And what's interesting about mystery schools, they aren't just one. They represent many flavors of the esoteric and the occult. And those things like Rudolf Steiner, Gurdjieff, Wilhelm Reich, Tesla, and countless others. And there is a interesting book called Tesla, and it's not just about him. It's about the place that is where folk who just, when you die, you can be vacuumed into the whirling blender of karma and spat out someplace, just like these two kids I was being soul spoken to, the little 2-year-old who was just a pistol, cheeky monkey, just driving, he was just going after every person who was a hypocrite. And pretty much all of them were, and they didn't even know it. That was the upsetting thing. That's like mind control. And these 4 ladies were dishing out mind control like nobody's business, right? And they were using all the tenets of like shouting people down and making lots of noise and interrupting your thought processes. And there are a whole bunch of other little tit-tats of mind control that they were doing. And I'm sure they had no idea that they themselves had been abducted and, played with in their head and then spat out to do the same thing in a more public sense to large groups of people, right? And that's what fame and, all of that is about. All those people who are in the entertainment business are all, have been messed with, right? One way. I mean, look, like they was talking about Bob Dylan, getting, making a monoculture out of the counterculture, and that's why. So, that's why I'm asking you, the cadre, to wherever you are, to use conscious intent. You are. I am conscious awareness. Be aware and have intent in everything you do, and reach out into your community, as they are all your relations, and that you live your life to, in every day and every way, bring peace to the earth, because we're the only ones who can. Those who are aware and conscious and who serve love's co-creation, and you can do it in anything you want to do. So these 50 people who, are my active students, and that they're all over the place. I mean, they're not sitting here with me. They're on Skype, and they're on WhatsApp, and they're on my the dude awake 42 at Gmail, my internet site, and they come on here. A number of you who are here tonight are part of that cadre, right? And so, and all of you who have come to the chat are the cadre. Even if you don't think you are, you are. Those other 50 folk are real, because they're actively trying to take my example and to freely choose to take component parts of it and make their life different. And they have all responded amazingly. And you and the cadre have, Fish, you have, Buddy sure has, a number of you have, right? And I can energetically feel those who have been on the chat tonight, who are on there now. I can feel you reaching out into your super conscious mind to change. That's where your real validity is. The Akashic record is just that. It's a record. You can learn stuff from it. You have a librarian, an animal totem to explain things to you, and a guardian angel to watch your back. These are tools, and they are supporters. They are guides. And you got the 9 doors. And one that is open is the doorway to your superconscious mind. You walk through it. You walk over the steps. You realize you're on a bridge. There was a guy named Dragon who was truly amazing guy. And he sent me drawings that he did when he was 11. And he has this drawing of his Akashic record, the doorway, the steps that kind of go over the bridge, and there's a house that his superconscious mind was, and it was like on a piece of ground, and it was floating in the air. So the microfilm was just hanging in the air, and he walked over the bridge into it, and there was a picture of him doing that, and he did that when he was 11. And I described it one night, and that's when he got a hold of me. He goes, you described something, I'm now 30-something years old, and you described something that I was 11. So he and I started a really tight relationship, and he sent me a number of drawings and poems and beautiful things. And he had, I probably had 200 or 300 shows online, and he had downloaded them on thumb drives. And I had them in my closet in a little box. And when I went looking for them, they were gone. The drawings, the thumb drives in the box. And then I saw a video that John did where he had gone through my stuff, and he had gotten, there was a picture of that box, and there was images of my great grandparents when they came over on the boat, and it had a copy of their wedding certificate and photos of them and letters that they had wrote. And John, it was right there. And then when I asked John about that, he took that show off, and said, I don't know what you're talking about. So, and that's, that's one of the things about John. There's a part of him that can do stuff, and I don't even know whether he knows that he's doing this stuff, right? And so that's why I'm a little concerned about, kind of staying up there with him, because there's certain elements of John. I mean, I love him dearly. He's my really good friend. I don't give up on him. He's got great talents, gifts, and he should live his life, not just stay up there all by himself. But I spent 2 years trying to help John physically by being an example, by cooking his meals, trying to show him, like I weighed 450 pounds. Now I weigh 210 pounds, They wanted to, basically give me a bypass. And now, my blood pressure is like 115/60, right? Or less than that. And my cholesterol and other things, I didn't have the money or capability to get those drugs since September. And my blood pressure is still low, and my cholesterol is still low. And my doctor gave me 60 days of those, and I started taking them, and all they seem to have done is somehow stressed out a muscle in my scapula up here and made me constipated. So we all have to make our own decisions. I took that just to see if it would make any difference, right? And I'm gonna have to continue it for at least a week or two, just to see if it has made a difference, right? So, that's, the scientist in me. So I ate the whole thing of prunes, and I'm going to go buy some prune juice. And that usually makes me pretty regular, no matter how constipated I get. So, and that's how I take care of my health. I'm conscious of it. I'm aware of it. I am constantly trying to fine tune it, see what works, what doesn't work. And that's what most people don't do. And that goes not only for my physical health of my avatar here, but for my mental health. I constantly am self-aware, self-conscious, introspective, and extroverted at the same time. And that's kind of how you have to be. You can't be monoculture within the dynamic of your own well-being, right? Because we are connected. Yeah. That's why my doctors take care of me. They are freaking amazed I'm still alive, and I haven't done any of the crap they wanted me to do to begin with, right? So they're like, I'm changing their worldview on their own practice, right? And it took me a while to find doctors who would do that, So, that's one reason I go to them, because I'm not only getting taken care of, but I am changing the way they practice medicine, which is a good thing. I passed my life expectancy when I was diagnosed with terminal heart failure. Yes, yep. After a heart attack, I stopped consuming all animal products. Yep, me too. When I was that big, and I basically had a heart attack. That's what they say caused me to die, and that's why they wanted to do a quadruple bypass and cut my legs off because they were black with red racing stripes. And I said no, and I basically reasserted my will on my avatar, and it took me 7 years, and and it's still a work in progress. I mean, at this point, I have to constantly be aware of what I do. Otherwise, it can have serious effects to my body. So, yes, and that's all it takes. It's called homeostasis, And so, Blue, I have to hand it to you for being self-aware and keeping your own homeostasis. That's all it takes, And illness is just that. It's a and disease. Disease is meaning a lacking of, it's like the high end of illness. Disease. You're lacking ease, right? And so when you can put yourself, and that's the thing that wears your body down the most is anxiety, fear, hatred, all of those negative emotions. It creates a tremendous well for, adrenaline and the other negative hormones in our body that kind of rips us apart. Cortisol is one of them, right? That's great for fight or flight, but when the tiger's running after you, but it's not a good thing to have as a daily diet of, right? So one way I stopped eating all fast foods, all sodas, anything with sugar. I got I got diabetes, so I can eat a little cupcake now and then. I can have a glass of wine now and then, but not every day, not every week, not every not every now and then, special occasion, not a problem. And with being conscious intent, you can be consciously intent about the organs of your body, right? You affect them. There's scientific proof that kind of intent can move mountains, Yep, exactamundo. I mean, I have braces on my joints because they're mush, and I do work and I don't always wear them, and I don't always use a cane, but those braces and my cane, my cane is my third leg, and since I don't see that well, I don't want to trip or fall because I'm like a china cup. But I do know how to fall. I mean, I've fallen a number of times in the last few years because I live in a mountain range, and from my man cave to my lodge to where the toilet is, I have to walk about half a mile just to do that little circle. And I do that little circle maybe 10, 20 times a day. And I did that because it's my own, Stairmaster, my own, treadmill, and that's what got my legs so I can walk everywhere. I used to have leg braces and I used to have to walk with a walker. Now I don't. And I have really good, my orthopedic surgeon guy gave me these really great braces. They're made out of material with Velcro, but they support my legs, my joints, really, is what I'm trying to protect, in a really excellent way. The orthopedic, they're not just something you buy at Walmart's. And the ones at Walmart's work pretty good to protect my joints, and the ones that are orthopedic, they take a good 5 minutes to put on my legs because they really support my joints and they don't restrict my legs at all. So whereas the ones I get at Walmart's for $12, they protect my joints, but they restrict my leg and also the blood flow, So if I'm walking around with these things on a lot, like if I, I'm go out to the woods to work, or have a project where I'm gonna, stretch and stress my joints, I wear the orthopedic ones because you can wear them all day. They don't tire your legs. They don't cut out the blood flow. They're amazing. And the ones on my ankles do the same thing. But I wear them not because I have to, but because they protect, better safe than sorry. So if I'm just, every day, not so much. But if I go out and I'm going to do something strenuous like work out in the forest or in my garden or work on somebody's something, I put that on. They're just to protect. It's like wearing a hard hat and safety goggles, right? So that's about it. 2.5 hours. Now I do, when I go to the supermarket, I do ride around in the golf cart of consumption, because my feet, the one thing that they haven't gotten used to is a concrete floor. They don't like walking on it. They don't like standing on it. And so that's why I ride the go-kart. And whereas walking on the ground, because when I walk on the ground, every footstep I take, I am connecting with Mother Earth. Mother Earth is that grounding, that she. And I get that connectivity of the prana coming in through my lungs and in through my nose, and breath and filling my lungs, and then my heart pumping blood through my lungs and taking all of that prana to every cell. That's why I'm healthy, because that's what I really, really, feed on, is God's love through that prana, right? Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, Blue. So I ride around that, and it's fun to ride in a go-kart in the supermarket. I've had many, and I had a miraculous little experience. I don't know if I explained it to you the other day. So the Kroger's has a caste system in their supermarkets. They have supermarkets. They bought Harris Teeter, which is a very fancy schmancy Uber supermarket. And so they have the Harris Teeter rich people thing. Then they have, the upper middle class Kroger's, and then they have the working class Kroger's, and then they have the poor people Kroger's. So, and most of Kroger's, those supermarkets don't have, big storerooms in the back. Everything is delivered every day, from 6 to 8 in the morning. The trucks are there and delivering stuff, and the aisles are full of guys stocking the shelves, right? And so, but the poor guys don't get that kind of service. So I was in a poor Kroger's, and they had like pallets everywhere and stacked to the roof with stuff for Thanksgiving and Christmas, because they didn't have a storage, room in the back for that stuff. So I'm on the little, battery go-kart shopping consumer easy chair, and I'm coming around this corner, and this lady comes rushing, she's like, "Get out of my way." And she actually smashes into my cart, which causes me to careen into a shelf that is end cap, right? And so it's not the built-in shelf, it's just standing there. And it's about 8 feet high, and each shelf is about this deep, about 12 inches deep. And they have stacked jars and jars and jars of what's that stuff? It's a molasses, right? And the glass jars are not safety glass. So I crash into this thing, and about 200 of these jars, because instead of having just one jar in that shelf that has a little thing so it can't fall over, they got 2 more stacked on top of the cap up there. So when I get it, it jingles, and all of the ones that were on top of the one that's kind of steady falls right on top of me, right? And it was truly amazing, because they came crashing down, and the lady who pushed me out, she got cut on the cheek by one of these jars, and she covered in molasses, which is dark. It almost looked like blood. So she was covered in it. She just had a little cut in her cheek, but it looked like she was bleeding out. And the rest of them, and they came right over me. And if they had hit me, if I had been a little further back, if this lady had really pushed me out of the, into it, I would have been pelted by, 20 to 50 of these bottles, and I would have really been hurt. But they went over me and smashed behind me. And what was truly amazing was it made a shape of my body on the floor behind me, right? And it crashed down into the basket and smashed, and there's broken glass all over me, but not on me, but all over in the basket, all over the stuff I was going to buy. And the manager came running up. "Are you okay?" Because, this maple syrup looked like I was bleeding out on the floor. I said, I think I'm okay. Why don't I just kind of pull out of this chaos over here and we'll check out? So I check myself, and he then moves. The lady looked like she was dead. She just had a little cut here, and she was screaming, and and the guy who was in charge of the meat market, he was looking right at it until he came out and said, "Lady, what are you, nuts? You know, you caused all." No, it's his fault. Look, he smashed it. He goes, "No, you smashed into him, and you know he was just right there, and you said get out of my way and smashed into him." Then the manager said, "Okay, Bob, that's enough. Go back to the cutting the meat." So manager had kind of gotten the thing, and then the sub manager came in, and she's the one who set it up, and he was just going to blame her. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm the person who's first of all, look at this is a mess. Look at all my stuff." And so, have you paid for that, sir? I said, "No, not yet." He said, "Well, it's we'll get you another cart. We'll go get the food you want." And I said, "Okay." So he goes, "Why don't you move down to the end of the thing, and someone will come and help you." Right. So I'm there 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I make a phone call. 15 minutes. I look at how much time has passed, and I'm looking, and there's like 40 people, and they only have one checkout person. And for some reason, the robot checkout thing isn't working. So, instead of getting, and they have 6 other, places they could have put people and checked, but they're like, the line is like around the building. And I just said, well, screw this. And I just get up and walk to my car and drive away. And when I'm driving away, the image I'm getting was, you didn't need any of that. You would have spent your last few dollars on that crap, and you didn't need that. And see, I've been in the last 18 months pretty much solid out in the deep green at my lodge. I don't consume anything. I don't go anywhere. And in the spring, summer, and fall, I'm mostly eating stuff out of the forest, and I have, my garden was pretty good. Certain things came in great. I had great string beans. I had great peppers. I had some pretty good squash. Then everything else didn't want to grow. My tomatoes didn't. I got a bunch of mostly green tomatoes, so I was getting into fried green tomatoes. But it's a very strange world out here in the everyday world of illusion. Yeah, I could have seriously been hurt. I could have been killed. And with the level of, but it just, I didn't really get touched. My cart got messed up. Everything but me got totally messed up. And the lady who caused it, she got a little cut here, and she got covered in all of that goo, right? And the guy, like I said, the meatpacking guy was just right there looking out his window, looking at what she did. And he came over, and he was somewhat irritated with this. I think they had an issue. And, and it comes, that lady was the extreme example of people who think they're entitled, I'm exceptional, I'm entitled, Yeah, I'm always protected, and that's why I have to really be careful about not being a schmuck. I'm a New Yorker. I can get annoyed. I can get impatient. I can all of the above, but I have to be on my best behavior all the freaking time. And it's not like I have to, meaning I have to, but it's not like I'm forced to. I'm choosing, because by doing such, I am being better. I'm being my better self. And I am much happier when I am my better self than being the asshole, I don't like being an asshole. So that's why we can all be protected. You be your better self, you're going to be protected. When I worked for the Housing Authority of New York as a police, can you imagine me? They made me a freaking policeman, and I'm the most unpoliced. And then they gave me a partner who was like, she was first woman to get through the U.S. Army's Ranger program, and she graduated top of her class, and she was never put out in the field because everyone was scared of her, right? She was like a killing machine. And so she then, taught, and she was too hard on everybody. And then she did other things. And she was she was better than anybody else in everything she ever freaking did, right? So, after 20 years, she kind of retired, and they gave her a nice little retirement bonus, because they. Anyway, so she went into policing, and nobody wanted to be her partner. And when I kind of stumbled in the New York Housing Authority because I ran this with a group of people, a thing where we were taking over abandoned buildings and putting homeless mommies and babies and kids, not drunks and crackheads, but people who were working hard, and then the economic collapse of the 80s occurred, and it dislodged about 300,000 working people, along with the advent of crack. Poppy worked in the garment district. He gave the check to mommy. She paid the bills. And then and every Friday he would go out with the boys and drink some rum and play dominoes and smoke a little boo. And then one day, oh, look, this new stuff, crack, let's try that. Bingo. Poppy didn't return that night, and that's kind of what crack could be to a lot of people. Smoke it once, bingo, they were gone, right? So that had a big effect on New York in the 80s, and along with AIDS. And thank you, Dr. Fauci, for killing millions of people with his response to AIDS. And he would say, oh, I did a great job, Talked to a lot of AIDS activists. I mean, he finally came around, but that's only once they found a protocol that Big Pharma can make a lot of money. So, and don't believe a word I say. I'm just a storyteller. Nothing I say is true. Check it out for yourself. So anyway, so we did that, and because I had good connects with the legal world, they could never. And I was a master electrician. I put legal electricity in every apartment. And so people had an electric bill. And so when the marshal came to throw them out, they'd say, here's my electric bill, get lost, because it's the gold standard of residency. So anyway, we won every legal battle. And at a certain point, the city said, we actually have an entity in the housing authority that was set up during the Depression to do exactly what you do. And so we've had this thing for 50 years. And we have done one building. You guys have been around 3 years, and you've done 50 buildings. You've housed 500 families. Obviously, you should take over this organization and do what you do with the authority of New York City Housing Authority. So we made a deal. We did it. And then they said, but Al, we want you to work, be the intermediate between these two entities and work for us, put you on the payroll, give you the authority. And I said, oh, okay. And so I showed up, and they said, you're going to work in the, New York City Housing Authority Police Department as a social worker. And I said, oh, okay. And they hooked me up with this killing machine. And because everyone, so they gave me a uniform and a gun and a radio and a billy club and a badge. And I said, I don't want any of this shit. All I'm going to take is the badge. So when we're in doing stuff, I won't get shot by a policeman. And they said, okay. And so, I walked around in the way I look, my pajamas, flip-flops, cowboy hat, mirrored sunglasses. And she looked like a killing machine. She looked more muscular than Arnold Schwarzenegger, but she was hot too. Had red hair, and she had this crew cut that was on the side. You know how black guys, she had really curly hair, so she cut it just like a black hip hop artist. She had a little lightning bolt on one side, and she was hot, but she had a bulletproof vest on, and she had military gear on, And when we would go to court, every now and then we'd have to go to court for something or other. And New York City policemen could go in there with their guns and all their paraphernalia, but us couldn't go in. Well, I'm just wearing a pair of shorts and a T-shirt and flip-flops. It's pretty obviously I have no weapon, but I had my little badge around my neck with a little pull chain around my neck, and so it was obviously I represented the New York City Housing Authority, and I had my little ID card and my wallet. And anyway, but when she went through the metal detector, they make her take off all her stuff. I remember one time we were in court, and she had 6 guns, 12 knives, about 10 of these kind of springy things that if they hit you with, it's like it's not a pleasant thing. She had her taser, she was one of the first people that had a taser and had a battery the size of a car battery. Anyways, they made her take all that stuff off, and it was like piled up. They had to get a pallet to put the shit on. Anyway, I mean, she did that on purpose. She didn't normally have that many weapons on her, but she'd have quite a few. And she was just making a point, and she was always making a point. And we were total partners. We really were. And she was bi, but she liked girls a little better. She was, the butch part of the lesbian, but she liked boys too. And so we were best of friends, partners. Police partners are like a married couple, and we were a married couple that got along amazingly well. And every now and then, when she got horny, we had sex, right? But it was her call all the time. But we were always like the best buddy. We were everything that a boyfriend girlfriend should be, and not that much sex. But whenever she had the itch, and she loved to dance, and because I was still the disco dude, we went out dancing every night. She loved really good restaurants, really. And so, I could go into about 20 really good restaurants because I built them, and they still owed me money, and that was part of the deal. Until you finish paying, I get to come in here and eat as much as I want and bring a few people with me. So, I mean, I was living a pretty good life in those days, and so she was my partner. And when my second, and she loved my second wife, and my second wife was kind of down with the fact that every time, sometimes it was the 3 of us, and my second wife liked that. She was quite adventurous, and I usually was just, the sex toy, and so. I mean, it was a good life, I have to admit. But when my wife died, boy, that sent me into a tizzy, and it broke my partner up too. She loved my wife. I mean, they were best of buds, coming from 2 different universes, but had the same worldview. Get out of my way, do what I say, or I'll kill you. I mean, both of those girls had that attitude, and they could do it too. And so. What happened to me was, so I was, I'm Mr. Shrink. I'm totally, at one with my feelings. I'm enlightened, blah, 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 blah. Not so much. Who knew? And so for a good 4 months after that, I wasn't like mopey or, depressed or any of that, but I kept pushing the envelope. Like, we got a call that, this guy, it was summertime, it's really hot. The air conditioning in this whole building didn't work. The elevators didn't work. And so they, this guy kind of lost it. And because his TV, he wanted to watch, a baseball game, and his TV didn't work, and his kids were running around screaming and yelling. And so he basically took out the shotgun and blew out the windows that wouldn't open, because allegedly the building had air conditioning. And he blew out the windows, and that caught a lot of attention. Explosion, lots of glass raining down on the front of the building. And so we got called in, and he basically had the shotgun wired around his wife's head with both barrels in her mouth. And the kids, he had a gun pointed at the kids, and they were like in the corner, go, right? So, we get that call. She's got the radio. It's a 419. Which means family dispute. Like the family disputes in this place were normally like that. And so we were having lunch, and so we finished lunch, and we were walking by a bodega. It's really hot. And I go, you know what? I got this little thing I think I want to do. I go in there, and I get two. I go, buddy, which are I don't care what brand beer it is. What's the one that's closest to the the freezing unit in the refrigerator? And he goes, oh, this Pabst Blue Ribbon. This stuff is almost frozen. And, I said, okay, give me 2 6-packs and put them in a paper bag. Got paper bags? And he goes, yeah, I got paper bags. I said, okay, put them in paper. He puts it in my now, roll it up, put it in another paper bag. Okay, you got a box? He goes, yeah, here's the box. So I have my own cooler now. I got these almost frozen beers in a cooler, and we go up into this building, up to the apartment. And I go, okay, you stay outside, and I'm going in, right? So, he's already blown the front door off its hinges with a shotgun. That was another thing that got people's attention. And so I just kind of walk in there. And he goes, who are you? I said, here, it's a hot day. I take a beer out, open it up here, have this. And he drinks it. He goes, my God, that's the best beer I've ever had. And I said, well, now your day is looking up. It started out kind of ornery, and you took it a bit too far, but here, is it okay if I sit down? Sure, sit down. I said, here, have another beer. Wow, that's even better. I said, yeah. So I'm just, sipping one, and he goes through 4 quite quickly. So he is kind of relaxed. He is now not as, angst as he was before. And I said, are there shells in that shotgun in your wife's mouth? And he goes, no. I said, then why have the shotgun in her mouth? And he goes, well, she didn't know that there weren't shells in there. And I just wanted her to shut up. And with the shotgun in her mouth, she couldn't say much. I said, well, why don't we let the kids and your wife go outside into the hallway to my partner? That'll just be you and me. And you'll have me. You want to stick that gun in my mouth? Sure. But, I'm a more high-valued target, so why don't you let the kids and the wife go, and, we'll talk. And so, he drank 5 more beers. He had, I said, can I take a look at your gun? He handed me the gun. I took it apart and left it in pieces on the table, and the shotgun did not have any shells in it, and he couldn't find any more shells. And I said, okay, so now you're disarmed. Now, I'm not telling anyone, I am not wired. No one on the outside knows this. But why don't you let me take you downstairs? Now, you're going to have to go and be booked, and you're going to have to go in front of a judge, but I'll go with you the whole way, and I will stand up for you, and I will get you. If I can't find you a good lawyer, I will help you represent, right? Until we do find you a good lawyer, right? So, and if we walk out together, and I'm going to have to put these handcuffs on you, but if we walk out together and I have my arm around your shoulders, they're not going to shoot you, right? And if my partner is, she's going to come in here with, I don't have any handcuffs, but she does. And she's going to come in here and she might scare you, but remember, she's going to protect you because I'm going to have my arm around you and she protects me like the avenging. Everyone's scared of her, even the police. So how about it? This is the best offer you're going to get. You're going to make it home alive. Your family's safe. We will work this out 100%. Okay? And I'm a shrink. I can say that you were temporarily insane because of the heat. And that's why you blew the windows out. Get a little ventilation. That's why you blew the door out, to get a little cross breeze, We can work this out. And so we did, his his pistol was in parts. His shotgun had no shells. My partner came in. He was scared shitless of her, and we handcuffed him and walked him out. And I went, I got in the police vehicle with him, and it was a New York City police vehicle. And they said, "Oh, by law, you can't." I said, "Fuck you." I just got this guy out. No one died. Part of the deal is for me to go with him all the way through the booking process and into court. Okay? Now, if you don't like it, we're going to go back up there and take you and put your gun in your mouth and let him shoot you in the head. I was a cheeky monkey like that. So the New York police, half of them really liked me a lot, and the others said, fuck them, right? So anyway, I kept doing things like that after my wife died, and my boss, who was the captain of our little division, said, "Al, I want you to go see a shrink." I said, "I already am seeing a shrink. I am a shrink, and I know a lot of shrinks, and I'm already, there are about 10 of them are worried about me, so I got 10 shrinks to talk to, And, and then he goes, "Well, you got to stop doing this." And then he goes, "But don't, because since, and I really, this is like, but I know you, and so I can tell you this, but since your wife died, you totally changed. And the numbers in this division, we have less people dying, less, violent crime, less drug, sales. Our division is doing better than any other. We're number one in the Housing Authority Police. And I am being looked at as being commissioner, and it's only because of you. So don't do this. I don't want you to die. But if you do, I'm going to make sure you get an inspector's funeral." And that's when the bagpipes and they roll hundreds of policemen behind you, and they're all wearing white gloves and all that. And so I kept doing things like that. And, I was protected, didn't right? So one time and this was not the last day working there, but this was the last event that everyone said, "Okay, you've crossed the line." And what happened was, we get a call, and what it was were there were 2 drug crews in this little apartment of this one guy who was standing in the way of these guys taking over the drug scene. And he was trying to be an activist kind of guy. And it wasn't a guy, it was a woman. And she had a lot of kids, and she was looking at other people. So there were 12 kids in there, 3 moms, and this lady. And the one gang who was kind of, I don't want to say backing this lady, but meaning she was part of one of their family. She was part of the family. And it was okay for what she was doing in their viewpoint because it was getting rid of their competition, because they only sold pot and the other guy sold everything. Anyway, so I just walk in there right in the middle of this argument, and it was getting heated, and they were each crew had about 6 guys in there, and they all had Mac 10s, which are semi-automatic pistols. And, it was not a good scene. It wasn't like kumbaya. It wasn't like they were working it out. It was like any second, one of these guys is going to pop off, and then, 40,000 bullets are going to go, and everyone's going to be dead, right? So now these guys, I've been working at this place for a year and a half. Everybody freaking, no, how could they not, walking with a killing machine as my partner, and I'm wearing pink shorts and flip-flops and cowboy hat and mirrored sunglasses and a Mickey Mouse t-shirt. It's hard to miss that. And so so I go in the middle of, and these 2 guys are mano-a-mano, and I just walk between them. And the one guy who's the more really nasty drug dealer, I've had a lot of dealings with him, but I've always been fair. I've never had a gun. I've never threatened him. I've never said a mean thing. I always have a good word for everybody. His crew knew me really well, and a bunch of their brothers and sisters and kids were part of our little school from the homestead thing, right? So, everyone there thought well of me and didn't want to kill me, right? And I wasn't a threat. I didn't have a gun, didn't have anything. I had this little badge and flip-flop shorts, T-shirt, a Mickey Mouse cowboy hat, and sunglasses. My uniform. Anyway, so I'm trying to negotiate this thing, and these guys, these two pinheads, will not stop being mano-y-mano. And the one guy, I'm sure he's high on meth, the nasty OG. And so he goes to raise his gun. If his gun goes off, all 12 of these guys with MAC 10s are just going to be shooting automatic in every direction, and all those kids are going to die. All those mommies, everyone in that place is going to frigging die. And so the guy lifts his gun up, and I grab it by the barrel, and it goes off. And this palm right here got blown off, right? And no. Can you see those lines? It didn't break any veins. It just took the fascia right off my hand. Just this whole section here, all the skin and the gooey stuff underneath the skin was blown right by the gas. The bullet didn't hit it, but the gas, because I was holding the barrel like this down to the floor, and the bullet went into the couch in the bottom, right? And the gas expelling from the barrel blew all of my skin off. So it was a kind of gooey, muddy, bloody mess, and everyone freaked out, right? And before you knew it, my partner was in there and disarmed took the guns away and threw them in the sink, and handcuffed about half of them and broke the legs of a couple of them. Their kneecaps, she just kicked them sideways, and they were on the ground. And she screamed, "Mommies and kids, out!" And they were out in 20 seconds. And by that time, the New York's finest were in the hallway taking care of the kids and getting into the stairwell. And the SWAT team had come in and taken over. And we kind of walked away. And she, had called in. As soon as that fire was shot, she said, man down, officer down, gave all the information, and then went in there. And was and luckily she didn't kill anybody. She just broke the kneecaps of a few guys, and so we got accommodations for that one. And about a week, and my boss said, "Okay, that's it. You're bandit. You've been shot, so you get paid leave for 2 weeks. And you've been seeing all your friend shrinks. You need to go see." One of the police shrinks. So because they want, I have to start dealing with the protocol. So I am. And, that shrink says, well, this is the most, well-adjusted, crazed police officer I ever met. And, he seems to be, his palm seems, it just took the skin and the gooey stuff off. And, he seems to be okay. But, he shouldn't go back to work right away. And he needs to be seeing me. And that's when my partner, so she'd been my partner now for 18 months, and another 4 months, 18 months, and 5 of those months was after my wife died. So she's like the closest person to me at that time, and she knows all my friends. So she calls up one of my friends and says, "This is what's going on with Al. What should I do?" And he goes, "Well, you need to call Mary. It's like calling Sal in Going Bad." And so Mary was an old friend of mine. We had gone to anthropology school together, and she was at Cornell, and she was in charge. She was the dean of not curriculum, but the students, and she was the head of HR of the teachers. So she was the person that connected the connected tissue between the student body and the teaching body. And on the side, she had this. She was getting another PhD, and so she was always going to Brazil, studying this tribe where they had mines for crystals, and so she. This is 1980. No. Yes, it was 87, right? And so this is just the New Age was coming about, and she was the largest importer of New Age crystals than anyone in America. And so she was making a fortune. She had all these kiosks and all these malls across America selling crystals, and she was making a fortune. And so she had this kind of diplomatic thing that she was basically shipping all the shit through and not paying anything on, and no one's looking at anything, and even if they open it up, just crystals and wasn't cocaine or anything. So anyway, long story short, she's making a lot of money. She spent a good deal of her time. Anyway, she's in Ithaca. She gets the phone call. She actually drives down, and my partner and her basically pick me up and put me in the car and drive me up to Ithaca, right? And basically, my friend says, okay, I have a place for you here in the university. You're going to work in the anthropology department. You're going to do your little thing of looking at trends. There's a guy who does something similar, and I gave him some of the stuff you've written, and I've given him a list of people you've worked for, and they've all said you do your own thing, but you're pretty amazing at what you do, and you're a team player, and you're not looking for to control or own or be the king, or you just enjoy the scholarly path. So they put me in that department. I met that guy. The guy was pleased by my presence and my work ethic, and got along with him well. I spent 3 years at Cornell doing some pretty interesting stuff, and I'd still be there today if it wasn't for the lake effect. You wake up in the morning at 60, you're running around campus in shorts, you go and teach a class, you come out, it's like 4 feet of snow and it's 20 degrees below zero. I just after 3 years of that, I just I can live with cold weather to a certain point, but not like that. So I had to go. But so I spent 3 years, and then I got a gig in Asheville doing ethnography on the Biltmore House, and then I did an ethnography on the Cherokee tribe so they could get backing by the BIA, and then I worked for the city of Asheville, getting all of their records. Because they were stuck in amber. Asheville was the Paris of the South in the 1920s, and they spent a whole bunch of money making it into a city, and then the Depression came. They didn't finish paying off the Depression debt until 1996, right? So no bank ever lent them any money, so then bulldozed the town. Like Ithaca, in the 70s, they took down this beautiful 19th century downtown and built a piece of crap mall in the middle of town. It was really, just kitsch 1970 architecture, and they, replaced really beautiful 19th century Gilded Age architecture. Anyway, so that's Asheville. It's really beautiful, and there's nobody there except really interesting people. A lot of Bob Moog, inventor of electronic music, ran the art in the music department there at UNCA, and there were a number of other. I forgot the guy. He was the Carl Sagan's alter ego. He was running the science physics department at UNCA, and he was a DARPA boy. He was a CIA guy, and they were using that campus to bring in really smart young people who would end up, working in the Black community, not African American, but dark military industrial complex, DARPA, which is basically Nazis, So that and anything within a 600-mile radius of Oak Ridge had shit going on for the Manhattan Project. So, you go to any national laboratory, and there's a Cornell avenue or road or whatever. So, Cornell had one of the first particle accelerators underneath their football stadium, and they had a lot of stuff underground, and so it was a very interesting place to be. I really enjoyed it, and I had my little niche, and I had access to all kinds of information. And everybody, I worked not just for the anthropology department, I worked for everybody, especially the DARPA boys. And they had this building called the Math Center that looked like Darth Vader. It was like 30 stories high, went underground 120. And you went up to the front door, and there were Air Force guards there with M16s. And they had an orange line that said, if you go past this, we're going to shoot you dead. And they did. There were a number of people, some kids who thought, oh, that's got to be, they won't shoot me. They went up there, went past the orange line, bang, 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 deader than a doornail. So, that's Cornell. It had some really weird shit. And I was there to study it all. It was very pleasant. It was very interesting. And I was the go-to guy for X kind of things, right? Really weird shit. And so, and I was part of the art world, the music world. So, like I said, I would have stayed in Cornell. I had my nice little niche. And I always had really interesting girlfriends, and they would, I'm a monogamous guy. Whoever I'm with, I try to make really happy. All these girls would like, well, he loves me, I'm going to marry him. And that usually was the end. When they would start, the first 3 months, I was, oh, he's fixing me. He's the perfect man, blah, 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 blah. Then when they said, well, we should get married, I said, I don't think so. And they went, what? I said, no. But you love me. I said, yeah, well, kind of. What do you mean, kind of? Well, I love a lot of people. Well, are you having an affair with? But of course not. I'm just with you, baby. You're the only, at this point, you're the only person I'm with. But that doesn't mean that somebody, and we're doing this day by day. It's a work in progress. We don't need to get married, and we could have kids. Maybe I'm not really up for it at this moment. My wife just died 3 years ago. I'm still kind of grieving. And then we get close, and I tell them that story, and they would get jealous over a dead woman. So it's like, no. Let's see. What are we saying here? You're protected. Yep. Yeah, something else really interesting. Since I stopped eating animals, how animals react to exactly. That's why animals love me. I don't really eat animal. I will. I eat everything. I eat everything, but I don't eat as much meat as I used to. I don't eat any red meat. It's chicky and fish, and I mostly eat fish. Let's see, blue. Canadian, so I don't know what Fauci did. Well, so he had that same kind of, head of infectious disease. So he basically said, well, AIDS, it's only gay and drug users use it, so we're not putting any money into studying it. And he was in New York at the time. And, it was like New York and San Francisco were just decimated by AIDS. And he had no empathy whatsoever. But once a company started to develop a cocktail and realized, the drug companies realized, well, gay guys actually, they're not like poor. They actually have pretty good jobs, and we can make a lot of money off these guys. Here's something that they're going to take for the rest of their life, and it costs $1,800 a month. Hey, this is a good. So Fauci kind of made a U-turn on AIDS, and then became the guardian angel, the hero of AIDS, and he wasn't. He was a scumbag. And it's all about the vengeance to Mr. Fauci, And but that's pretty much all the medicine in America. We spend more money. We spend something to the order of $3 trillion on our medical model in America, and we're 48th. I mean, Cuba, Istanbul, a ton of third world countries have better medical systems than we do. I'm old enough to remember when women started wearing haircuts like that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Friends with benefits. Yep. And again, it was totally on her call. Whenever she had the itch is when we did. And like I said, when I was married, she liked my wife better, at least sexually. And my wife, like I said, was somewhat my wife was very, what I have to say, very adventurous. All the women in my life have been very adventurous, They weren't, I like strong women, I like women to initiate the sexual dance, I'm a good dancer, but I'm not thinking about it. And if she's got itch, that starts getting me to get itchy, so I mean, I'm very malleable and easily I'm attracted, to it. But I'm not thinking about it. It's not, I'm not the number one thing in my mind. I got a whole bunch of other things I'm thinking about. But once it's the right time and I got the itch and she's got the itch, then we go and scratch it and do the dance. And I'm really a good dancer, so I've never had complaints. And I'm a snuggly guy, and I just don't go to sleep. I stay up all night after, and talk and talk and talk as long as they want to talk and talk and talk, and keep rubbing them until they get to scratch again, and then we itch, and we're off to the races. So, and that's what's called intimacy. And you can share it if it's something that everyone's agreeing on. But I was never, in the 60s and 70s, and my first wife, was a San Franciscoan, and I went back to San Francisco with her. She said, "Oh, I know everyone in San Francisco, like you know everyone in New York." And when we got there, everyone she knew in San Francisco died of AIDS, And so it was like, what? And I could not do any of the stuff I used to do in New York. I didn't have the connections. I didn't, they didn't have the same kind of stuff going on. And so that was that. We call friends with benefits. Yep. So here it is. Oh, look at that. 3 hours, 26 minutes, and 26 seconds. So what time is it? Well, it's about 1 o'clock. So it's time for me to go to bed. Well, that was a nice chat. So Blue, you should get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail, my Gmail account, my email. Send me a little email. Tell me what, and it's a good thing. I mean, a lot of people get a hold of me there to have a nice conversation that the rest of the world isn't watching. But I really appreciate you coming, and everyone who has come tonight in the chat. We are the cadre. So say I all. So say we all. And so I will do, since I have access to the internet, I'm going to be doing it at least once a night, or once in the morning, or once in the afternoon, or maybe like today, I did 3. I had 3, did 1 in the morning, and then I did 1 at that library. I like that library. I'm going to go back there. Have some pretty good vibes there. I like that reading room. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to leave right now and go to sleep. Okay? Okay. Love you guys. Remember, conscious intent, I am. Conscious awareness, I am. Jane, see you later. You too. Everybody on the cadre line tonight, everybody wants to get a hold of me. I'm very easily, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Dude awake 42 at Gmail. The dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? And if you want to throw anything in my PayPal account, again, you just have to go on PayPal. They'll ask you for my Gmail. You'll stick it in there. And anything is appreciated. And PayPal its protocols change like by the minute, and it used to be easy to use, and it still kind of works. But they keep putting these advertisements that you can't get to your thing without you wanting to sign up for whatever they want you to sign up. So it's just a sign of the times. So okay. Yep. Conscious intent, I am. Conscious intent, I am. Conscious awareness, I am. Love you guys. You're the best. Do, 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 do.